democratic. Our Muslim community, our healthcare workers, our educators, our small business owners are a vital, inseparable part of our story. However, we must also confront a harder reality. Too often, the place of Muslim Australians in this country is unjustly questioned. There are some, including in this parliament, who have tarred this community with a broad brush of hatred and prejudice. Let me be clear. Labor rejects this rhetoric of division. You belong here. Your contributions are what make our nation strong, and we stand firm against attempts to diminish your identity as proud Australians. Instead, we celebrate the values of zakat, the selfless charity and empathy so many practice daily. Whether gathering at a local mosque for Taraweeh or preparing a crowded table for a first iftar, our faith, your faith, enriches the fabric of our community. To every family in my electorate celebrating, may your fast be easy, your prayers be answered, and from my family to yours, I wish you a blessed, healthy and happy month. Thank you.
Deputy Speaker, with the huge changes in the media and communication industry over the past 20 years, it has become harder and harder for local newspapers to survive. I'm proud to say that community journalism is still alive and well in the Parkes electorate. Indeed, the Cobar Weekly is celebrating its 40th birthday. That's 40 years of celebrating and commemorating community milestones and 40 years of advocating for the Cobar community. That is a significant achievement, and I congratulate all of those who have played a role in the Cobar Weekly over the years, including the managing editor Sharon Harland and her team. I would also like to congratulate the team at the Broken Hill Times, who have celebrated the paper's first anniversary in October last year. The Broken Hill Times stepped in when the Barrier Truth shut after 130 years of operation. The Gunnedah Times marks its 5th birthday in November last year, and it was established with the owners of the Narrabri Courier. The electorate's own Lucy Pert, who took over the historic Gilgandra Weekly and added a number of other mastheads to the stable, has been a strong advocate for community journalism. Lucy was last year awarded life membership of the Country Press New South Wales after a record 8 years of being the president. There are over 35 publications in my electorate, from the Western Herald in Bourke to the Hillston Ivanhoe Spectre to the Parkes Phoenix, the Champion Post to the Dunedoo District Diary, and everywhere in between. Thank you for the work that you do.
Member for Hughes.
Deputy Speaker, last night our community got behind our local star Emily Arthur as she represented Australia in the snowboard halfpipe at the Milano Cortina Winter Olympics. Emily is a Hughes local from Warrenora Heights who went to Bosco College in Engadine, like me, but unlike me, she served as the flag bearer for the 2016 Winter Youth Olympic Games in Lillehammer, where she won a silver medal. This is Emily's 3rd Winter Olympic campaign, and she said she wasn't there to play it safe. Emily's second run was delayed after the competition was paused for 10 minutes after a terrifying crash from one of her fellow contenders from China. The usually joyful and energetic atmosphere reduced to silence while Emily had to stay ready for her run. True to her word, Emily went for it. But unfortunately, her difficult second trick couldn't quite get up. Emily did an amazing job representing us. We are so proud of the heights that she's reached over her 3 Olympic Games, and we're looking forward to all that she achieves in the years ahead. Deputy Speaker, we send our congratulations to Emily and to all the Australians doing us proud these Olympics. Forza Team Oz.
Member for Fadden.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Today I wanted to deliver a message to all Australians. You deserve better from this government. And I say that because I know that in suburbs in my electorate, like Parkwood, Pimpamar or Pacific Pines, you're struggling under the burden of this cost of living crisis that has been thrust upon you by this Albanese Labor government. And we know that the Reserve Bank thinks that you're doing it tough too, under circumstances that are entirely at the feet of this Labor government. Last week, the CPI numbers that came out from the ABS went back up to 3.8%. It leaves the Reserve Bank with virtually no choice but to raise interest rates. So every Australian with a mortgage has now seen the RBA set their rate at 3.85%. Now, the obligation for this Labor government when they landed in office in 2022 was to soften the blow to soften the landing after COVID, but what they've done has caused a crash. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is families all over the Gold Coast, in suburbs like Ormeau, Arundel and Labrador, struggling, mortgage repayments that are now $1,800 per month higher than what they were when the Coalition left office in 2022. Sadly, we must return to the government in order to make sure that we restore the Australian way of life. You deserve so much better.
Member for Hunter.
Thank you, Speaker. I want to recognise two outstanding locals from Singleton, Josh and Beck Barnett, who have both claimed Australian titles at the recent ABCRA National Finals Rodeo in Tamworth. Husband and wife, two national champions, one incredibly proud community. Josh qualified in 4 events, the first bloke to achieve that in more than 20 years, and secured the Australian Saddle Bronc title. He also finished in the top 10 across his other events, missed out on the all-round cowboy total by just 3 points. That's consistency, determination and grit at the highest of levels. Beck went in the finals ranked second in steer undecorated and delivered across 3 demanding rounds, finishing first, second and fourth to take out the national title. That is composure under pressure, Speaker, and a true championship form. What makes this achievement even more impressive is that Josh and Beck both work full-time while contributing to their family business, Barn Lodge Stock Horses. Josh has been part of Morgan Engineering since he was 16, starting an apprenticeship and now serving as a customer service manager. I want to acknowledge Morgan Engineering for backing Josh with travel, support and sponsorship so he can compete nationally while still continuing his career. This is a regional Australia at its best, Speaker. Hard work, family business, local employees backing local talent and national success coming straight out of Singleton and the Hunter. Thank you.
Member for Gippsland.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Rotting from the top.
Props,
Rotting
I will
from the
remind
top.
you.
The report headline says it all. And what's inside this independent report is a catalogue of corruption and criminality. I'm surprised those opposite are interjecting. Rotting from the top tells
Member
the
for
story
Gippsland.
of the CFMEU,
Member for Gippsland.
corruption and rorts.
Sit down. Well, you wouldn't listen to me, so I'm asking you to sit while I explain something to you, and you can have the call again. I told you about props at the beginning of it. That's the second time you chose to ignore me, so you can have another shot without the props.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. If Victorian Premier Jacinta Allan had an ounce of decency, she would take some responsibility for the failures of her government and resign immediately. Ms Allan was the minister at the epicentre of the big build projects, where an independent anti-corruption investigation uncovered $15 billion worth of rip-offs and rorts. And the member for Bendigo who spoke in support of John Setka is speaking up now. Do you still support John Setka on the rorts and rip-offs and the corruption in the CFMEU? Member for Bendigo, do you still support him?
Please direct your comments to the chair.
Well, Deputy Speaker, if they're
You can ask
interjecting,
me about that. You cannot direct your comments directly
Deputy
to
Speaker,
her.
I think I've had every right to respond to interjections. So why does this matter? Why does this matter, Deputy Speaker? Because this is a $5,000 per household corruption tax on every Victorian household. $15 billion worth of taxpayers' money wasted. Now, what would $15 billion buy you? Think of the new hospitals. Think of the improvements to schools. Think about the improvements to our roads. Think about taxpayers' money being paid to union thugs and organised crime mates instead of being paid to recruit more police, more nurses and more teachers. Now, I'm pleased to see, Deputy Speaker, that the Liberal leader in Victoria and the National leader, Danny O'Brien, are offering a fresh start and real solutions. We need to end the rorts, the waste and the corruption to get Victoria heading in the right direction.
Member for Gordon has the call.
Deputy Speaker, our record investment in Medicare is seeing real cost of living relief around the country, like in my community in Melbourne's western suburbs. Just take a walk around Caroline Springs, Deer Park or Deanside and you'll see it's full of young families moving into the area and building their futures. Families who have mortgages, bills and weekly supermarket shops shouldn't be hit with another bill every time they visit a GP. And no one should be putting off seeing a doctor because of the cost. I know this. Labor knows this. It's why we've increased bulk billing incentives so that more people can see a doctor for free. And the results are in, Deputy Speaker. There are now 23 Medicare bulk billing clinics in my electorate of Gorton. That's 70% of the GP clinics in our local area where you can get an appointment for free. 70%. The national bulk billing rate is now sitting at over 80%. 96% of Aussies live within a 20-minute drive of a fully bulk billed practice. That is incredible, Deputy Speaker. And we have 2 urgent care clinics just down the road in Melton and Sunshine. That's free walk-in care, fully covered by Medicare, taking pressure off our emergency departments. This is making a real difference for families, and it's the direct result of this Labor government's historic investments in Medicare, because when you visit the GP, you shouldn't need to carry your credit card, just your Medicare card.
Member for Wannon has a call.
Deputy Speaker, I'm pretty sure this question time we're going to see those in government looking back at people's track records to see whether they're suitable for higher office or not. So what I thought I'd do is I'd look at the Minister for Energy's previous records, just to give the bit of a house as to why he was appointed as the Minister for Energy. And he had nearly 3 months as Treasurer in the lead up to the 2013 election. Guess what he defended? He defended higher deficits. Guess what he defended? The bank deposit levy. Do you remember the bank deposit levy? He defended lower growth. He defended lower growth, and he defended higher employment. So isn't that the most impeccable track record for Labor to appoint as the Minister for Energy? And he hasn't let us down in that portfolio either, because question after question after question, we've asked him whether he's going to deliver his promise on $275. And he won't even mention the words. He will not mention the words. So when they're talking about the history of people here in this question time, have a look at their track record, because it is appalling, and the Minister for Energy is absolutely the prize example.
Member for Sturt.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. As of this week, 3,247 households in my electorate of Sturt have installed a battery under the Albanese Labor government's Cheaper Home Battery Scheme. That's 3,247 households using clean energy, enjoying lower energy bills and contributing energy to the grid, which lowers bills for everyone. When these figures came out, I shared the results with my community and invited people with a battery to get in touch to tell me how that battery was making a difference. One of those who responded was Peter, who lives in Paradise in the northeast part of Sturt. He said, "As a retired resident of Sturt, I am one of the households that has benefited from the Cheaper Home Battery Scheme. I would like to express my sincere thanks for this initiative, which has made home battery storage more affordable and has allowed us to make better use of our rooftop solar by reducing household energy costs." For many of us in retirement, being able to manage rising energy costs while also contributing in a practical way to a cleaner energy future is something we value greatly. This program has made a real difference to our household. Thank you for highlighting the positive impact these policies are having for local residents. Not just in Sturt, across the country, cheaper home batteries are good for the planet, good for the hip pocket and good for the country.
In accordance with Standing Order 43, the time for members' statement has concluded. I'll invite members to take their seats quickly and quietly as possible. Give a call to the Prime Minister.
I inform the House that the Deputy Prime Minister will be absent from question time today. He's undertaking duties and representation as Defence Minister internationally. The Minister for Defence Industry will answer questions on his behalf, and I inform the House that the Minister...
Order. The member for Fisher, when the Prime Minister is making announcements, members want to hear the announcement. I know it was said in jest, but I just ask, when announcements are before the House, that just people listen. Prime Minister.
I inform the House that the Minister for Housing will be absent from question time today, and the Treasurer will answer questions on her behalf.
Before we move to questions without notice, there was a use of props during the 90-second statement, so I want to ensure that all members are aware that's highly disorderly, and I will take action if that continues. We'll move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? I give the call to the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. I refer to the report into CFMEU corruption, where the Chief Investigator found that taxpayer funds were compromised, and I quote, "Bribes were being paid here, there and everywhere." Will the Prime Minister write today to the National Anti-Corruption Commission seeking an urgent investigation into this serious matter to ensure that Commonwealth taxpayer funds have not been misused and that no Commonwealth official has been implicated in these extremely serious findings?
Call to the Minister for Workplace Relations and Employment.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank the Leader of the Opposition for her question. The Watson report is an important report that was commissioned by the Administrator to help him in the work that he is involved in cleaning up the CFMEU. Of course, this report was detailed work that clearly identified issues going back from 2012 until the Administrator actually took over. Mr Irving has released a detailed statement in response to the report. He will refer the report to the AFP, Victoria Police, the Fair Work Commission and other relevant law enforcement agencies and regulators. Mr Irving has said that this report had been released so authorities can take whatever enforcement action they consider appropriate as the CFMEU enters a new chapter under his leadership.
Call to the Honourable Member for Maribyrnong.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government showing leadership and delivering for Australians by strengthening Medicare, easing cost of living pressures and helping them to earn more and keep more of what they earn? How does this compare to other approaches to leadership in Australia?
The call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Maribyrnong for her question. Indeed, we are focused on the Australian people and working every day to deliver for them. We're strengthening Medicare because that's just what Labor governments do. More bulk billing, making medicines cheaper, opening urgent care clinics, delivering 1-800 Medicare, properly funding public hospitals, making sure that the only thing that Australians need is their Medicare card, not their credit card. We're delivering cost of living relief across the board, cutting taxes, cutting student debt, getting real wages up and protecting penalty rates so that Australians can earn more and keep more of what they earn. We're properly funding every single public school in the country, making a difference. We've had 725,000 Australians have benefited from free TAFE. We're establishing university study hubs around regional Australia. We are making it easier for Australians to get into their own home. Help to Buy is up and running, Build to Rent is building. And since we fast-tracked our 5% deposit scheme in October last year, more than 31,000 new home buyers have their first home. There's always more to do, and our work to make a positive difference is never finished. But, Mr Speaker, while we're building more homes for Australians, those opposite are busy tearing down their own homes. They're obsessed with cutting each other down, but they never want to cut your taxes or cut the cost of living. They can't stand each other, Mr Speaker, but they all stand for cutting Medicare. They love fighting, but they never fight for Australia. They just fight each other because it goes to their core values. And we've seen that with the extraordinary launch of a leadership campaign that didn't have a single new policy idea. It was just the vibe. They got out there, not a single new idea.
Order. No, Prime Minister will. No, the Prime Minister pause. Before we go to the next question, I'll hear order. Members on my right. The member for Moncrieff is entitled to take her point of order, and she shall do so.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Prime Minister, it's on relevance. You're really not talking about what the question was and giving us an answer. You're focusing on the opposite.
Order. The member for Gippsland, the Leader of the House.
The final part of the question asks for the Prime Minister to provide information to the House on other approaches to leadership. There are many to choose from those opposite, and that's what he's doing.
The Prime Minister was definitely asked about approaches to leadership, and so the comments he's making is obviously directly relevant to the question he was asked.
I was waiting for their leadership candidate to say, vote for me and I support world peace. That was the substance that was in there. Because essentially they all agree. They all agree. We're not looking after Australians but just looking after themselves. And it doesn't matter who sits in that chair. The problem isn't the leader. The problem is that whoever sits there will just be another Liberal.
The call to the honourable member for Warringah.
Thank you. To the Housing Minister or Treasurer in her stead. Warringah contains some of the most expensive land in the country, contributing to a shortage of crisis accommodation and social and affordable housing. The government has announced plans to divest part of HMS Penguin land at Balmoral in Warringah and intends to seek full market value, prompting concerns the land will be sold to wealthy developers for luxury apartments and not address issues of public affordable, social and affordable houses or crisis accommodation. Will the minister take steps to ensure this public asset is used for social benefit?
Give a call to the Treasurer representing the Minister for Housing, Homelessness and Cities.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr Speaker, and to the honourable member for her question. I will speak to the colleagues about that specific parcel of land that the honourable member refers to. I know that you've raised it with us in good faith, and we will check it out. On our approach to social housing more broadly, we've built about 5,000 social and affordable homes already. There's another 25,000 in planning or construction. And that's because, unlike our predecessors, we are taking this housing challenge very seriously. And we know that in different communities around Australia, there are different opportunities to build more social and community housing. And as we go about that important task, we'll be as consultative as we can be.
Call to the honourable member for Lingiari.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Indigenous Australians. Minister, today the government released Closing the Gap annual report, and the Prime Minister demonstrated in his address that we are getting on with the job of delivering for First Nations people. What are the priorities of this year's Closing the Gap report?
Call to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations representing the Minister for Indigenous Australians.
Thank you, Speaker. And I'd like to thank the member for Lingiari for that question, but also for the incredible, valuable role that she plays on ensuring that our government remains focused on closing the gap. As our Prime Minister has said, our government is determined and optimistic about closing the gap for First Nations people. To achieve this, our government is building on what works, listening to First Nations people, partnering with their organisations and investing in community-led solutions. I'd like to really recognise the Minister for Indigenous Australians on her work on the 2025 Closing the Gap annual report and the 2026 annual implementation plan, which demonstrates our progress and sets out a clear agenda for the year ahead. Our government is delivering jobs and training. We're easing the cost of living pressures and making significant new investments in areas such as food security in remote communities, health, housing and education. The Albanese government is delivering more real jobs in remote communities because every Australian deserves the opportunity of the dignity of work and a fair pay for the work they do. We have announced that we are doubling the Remote Jobs and Economic Development program from 3,000 to 6,000 jobs. Already 1,500 jobs have already been created across the country. And we're delivering cost of living relief by lifting the cap on our low-cost essential subsidy scheme and making it available to all 225 remote stores across Australia, reducing the price of 30 essential grocery items. And through National Cabinet, governments have agreed on record Commonwealth investment for First Nations health and secured further health investment for states and territories. And while building on what works, we're investing in Aboriginal community-controlled health services infrastructure. We're supporting birthing on country so more babies are born at full term, and we're training more First Nations health workers. The Albanese Labor government is also taking action where we know we need to see more progress. This week, in partnership with First Nations people and all Australian governments, we have launched the first standalone national Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander plan to end family, domestic and sexual violence, backed by immediate investment. Now, this has been long advocated, and I'd like to recognise the work of the Minister for Social Services and Auntie Muriel Bamblett, along with the Our Way Steering Committee, for making this happen. Closing the gap requires partnership with First Nations people and action right across government. As the Prime Minister has said, working together we will succeed in closing the gap and delivering better outcomes for First Nations Australians.
I call the member for Goulston. I'll just do some acknowledgements in the gallery today. I'm pleased to welcome Councillor Helen O'Neill from Bega Valley Shire as a guest of the Emergency Management from her electorate of Eden Monaro, and Mr Rocco O'Keefe OAM and Mrs Joan O'Keefe OAM, both awarded Order of Australia medals this year in this year's honours list as guests of the member of Moncrief. Give a call to the honourable member for Goulston.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister, and I refer to his minister's refusal to answer questions yesterday and today about Geoffrey Watson's report into the CFMU Labor cartel of corruption. Given the Prime Minister has refused to write to the National Anti-Corruption Commission, can the Prime Minister explain what steps he has taken to satisfy himself that not a single hard-earned taxpayer's dollar from the Commonwealth has been misused?
Give a call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I want to address the part of the question that goes to the NAC. The NAC is independent. That is how it has been established. They can look at whatever they want to look at, they can refer and do whatever inquiries they want, and they should be allowed to do so without political interference.
Paul. No, the Prime Minister has concluded his answer. Order. Order. The member for Goulston has asked his question. The question's been answered. We'll now hear from the honourable member for Solomon.
Thanks, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. How is the Albanese Labor government's record investment in Medicare making it easier for Territorians to see a doctor for free? Why is it so important after a decade of cuts and neglect?
Call to the Minister for Health and Ageing and the Minister for Disability and the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Thank you, Speaker. And thanks to the member for Solomon. He and the member for Lingiari are amazing advocates for better health care for that incredible part of the country they represent. And their advocacy, that advocacy, I can tell you, has driven our record support for a stronger Medicare in the top end. The member for Solomon, I can tell you, Mr Speaker, was a relentless supporter of Charles Darwin University's bid for the first medical school ever in the Territory. I know he's delighted they're taking on students this month, Mr Speaker. And both members also pushed our government finally to address the historical underfunding of Territory hospitals that had seen the Territory receive less funding proportionally than any other jurisdiction for many, many years, and we fixed that as well, Mr Speaker. This year, we've increased Commonwealth funding to Territory hospitals by 30%, the biggest increase any jurisdiction has ever received in hospital funding. Indeed, Territory hospitals, as a result of the National Cabinet Agreement, Territory hospitals will receive $1 billion more than they would have received through an extension of the old Morrison Agreement, Mr Speaker. And we've opened 8 Medicare urgent care clinics as well, Mr Speaker. 6 in remote communities, 1 in Alice, 1 in Palmerston, and a 9th urgent care clinic will soon open in Darwin because of a promise made by the member for Solomon at the last election, Mr Speaker. Now, Mr Speaker, the member also asked me about bulk billing rates in the Territory, and I'm pleased to report that the number of general practices in Solomon that are now bulk billing all of their patients all of the time has tripled since November, Mr Speaker. Now 3/4 of general practices in Solomon are 100% bulk billing because of the investment that we made last year, Mr Speaker. But indeed, right across the territory, bulk billing rates are skyrocketing, helping people see their doctor for free. The bulk billing rate in the territory now for pensioners and concession card holders and kids is now over 97%, the highest rate in the country, Mr Speaker. But the biggest increase, I'm pleased to say, has been for working-age Territorians who don't have the benefit of a concession card. I said yesterday, Mr Speaker, that bulk billing for those working Australians has increased by about 8% across Australia since November, but that increase is 21% in the territory, a 21% increase for working Australians in just 3 months, which means that the total bulk billing rate in the Northern Territory has already almost reached 90%. It's now 89.5%. And I tell you, Mr Speaker, that shows the value the Territory gets for two amazing local MPs and from a government that's determined to strengthen Medicare.
Call to the honourable member for Nichols.
For climate change and energy, does the minister agree that the Albanese government has broken its promise to reduce household energy bills by $275 by 2025?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thanks, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable member for his question. And there's no doubt that energy prices have been under pressure in recent years. No doubt at all. We've been very clear about that. The Australian people know that. Energy prices in Australia are slightly below the OECD average, but that doesn't mean that that hasn't put huge pressure on Australian families and businesses as energy prices have gone up. That is the fact, Mr Speaker. Now, there's two questions. How did we get here and what are we going to do about it? Well, the fact of the matter is, when there was a global energy crisis, Australia entered that crisis ill-prepared.
The Minister will pause. There's just a wall of noise happening at the moment. So I'm going to ask the Minister just to be heard in silence, just as the member for Nichols was. This is a repeat performance and it's not going to continue today. The Manager of Opposition Business, please don't interject when I'm addressing the House. And the Leader of the Opposition as well. Just...
Mr Speaker, give her a pass.
Order. The Minister will continue.
In defence of the Leader of the Opposition, Mr Speaker, she was complimenting me on my tie, so I'm prepared to take the interjection. But, Mr Speaker, we entered the global energy crisis ill-prepared because under the previous government 4 gigawatts of dispatchable power had left the grid and 1 gigawatt had come on. I hear moans from those opposite.
Order. The Leader of the Nationals.
And as you know, Mr Speaker, I'm always trying to find a bipartisan note at the dispatch box. So to quote Senator Canavan, who recently said, the other thing I often hear from government senators and members of the other place is that the former government failed because 4 gigawatts...
Will pause. The member for Gippsland on a point of order.
Well, thank you, Speaker. And the point of order is on relevance. The question was very tight. The minister is being as loose as a goose. If he can't answer the question, he should just sit down.
Order. The issue with these questions are you're asking an opinion. Does he agree with his commitments to reduce? So he's arguing because of the question he's been asked. It places because of the question, the way the question is framed. So if you're asking whether he thinks he's broken something or disagreed about does he agree the broken promise to reduce the cost, he's arguing that perhaps that's not the case and he doesn't agree with that, right? So it's going to be the same answer that he's going to get to the same question that he's getting over and over again on this topic. So just make sure the minister is being directly relevant. He just can't start quoting random people. He's got to make his answer elected representatives. Other members. Order. that he just needs to make whoever he's quoting directly relevant to the question he was asked.
I, for one, Mr Speaker, would never call Senator Canavan random. But, Mr Speaker, Senator Canavan said,
Order.
The other thing I often hear from government senators and members of the other place is that the former government failed because 4 gigawatts of baseload power came out of the system over that decade or so and only 1 gigawatt was installed to replace it. That is true. That is a fair criticism of energy policy over the last 10 years or so, Mr Speaker. You won't often hear me approvingly quoting Senator Canavan, but he's spot on there, Mr Speaker. Now, then the second question is, what do you do about it? Well, we on this side of the House think that you introduce more of the cheapest, fastest to deploy form of energy. Those opposite think the answer is more of the most expensive, slowest form of energy, Mr Speaker. So, on that side of the House, we saw 4 gigawatts of dispatchable power leave the grid and 1 gigawatt come on. In our not yet 4 years in office, we've seen 2 gigawatts leave and 7.7 gigawatts come on, Mr Speaker. 7.7 gigawatts come on.
Order.
That's more supply. More supply means lower prices, Mr Speaker. Less supply means upward pressure on prices. That's what the Liberal and Nationals left Australia with, particularly their former Energy Minister, the member for Hume, Mr Speaker, who in 2018 promised, and I quote, that he would slash $183 to just over $400 per annum from household bills, Mr Speaker, and in a speech on the 30th of August 2018. By the time he left office, were bills down $400 a year? No, Mr Speaker. They were up $45 on Ausgrid, $116 at Endeavour and $135 for Essential. The member for Hume.
Order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Werriwa.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations. How is the Albanese Labor government working to close the gender pay gap, and how does this compare to other approaches?
I'll give the call to the Minister for Employment and the Minister for Workplace Relations.
Well, thank you, Speaker. I'd like to thank the member for Werriwa for her question and her strong advocacy for working women in this country. Our government has placed gender equality at the heart of our workplace relations reforms. We put gender equality well front and centre when our government funded well overdue pay increases for workers in aged care and early childhood education, many who were women. Early educators like Leanne from Canberra, who said, "We're finally being recognised for the professionals we are." Our government also took action to reinvigorate enterprise bargaining, which is delivering higher wages for women. I'm pleased to report that the latest ABS weekly earnings data show that women on enterprise agreements are earning 12.4% more. This is good news. Now, the Albanese Labor government has consistently advocated to the Fair Work Commission for a pay increase for minimum wage and award-reliant workers, many of whom are women. And when the government also stepped up, importantly, to protect penalty rates in law when they were under threat, to ensure that these same workers' pay wouldn't go backwards. Of course, we banned pay secrecy clauses. This improves the ability for women to advocate for better pay. And we are starting to see the benefits of our reforms. When the former coalition left government, the gender pay gap was at 14.1%. I'm pleased to report to the House that under our government, the gender pay gap is now lowest on record at 11.5%. This progress hasn't happened by accident. It's the result of a government determined to prioritise gender equality. Now, I am asked about other approaches. And yes, there was a very, very different approach to tackling the gender pay gap by those opposite when they were in government. While those opposite sat on the government benches, they failed to take any practical action when it came to closing the gender pay gap. Their attitude was exposed by the very now famous Senator Canavan, who said the gender pay gap report was, and I quote his words, useless data that breeds resentment and division. They just don't get it when it comes to the gender pay gap. But to be fair to Senator Canavan, he might be clueless about the gender pay gap, but one would say he's pretty good at breeding resentment and division when it comes to the coalition. While those opposite remain divided and focus solely on their own jobs, we're getting on with backing Australian women earning more.
The call to the Honourable the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question goes to the Treasurer. Australia's debt is due to hit $1 trillion over coming months. The Treasurer has spent years dishonestly claiming others had hit this milestone, and yet in truth it is going to happen on his watch. Will the Treasurer confirm that, for the very first time in Australia's history, Australia's debt will soon hit $1 trillion?
The part of that question with the dishonesty is not within the standing orders,
will soon
as
hit
we've dealt with that
$1
earlier
trillion.
this week as well. So just get you to withdraw that part. You can't accuse someone of being
withdraw.
I thank the member, and the Treasurer now has the call.
It's kind of you to refer to him as the Deputy Leader, Mr Speaker. For now it is. Yeah, for now it is.
Order.
That's the point I'm making. That's the point I was making.
Order. I'm going to get the House to order, and I'll hear from the Deputy Leader of the I'll hear from the Deputy Leader of the Nationals.
Speaker, thank you. It's not a point of order, but I'm reminding you of your comments at the start of the week, yesterday, where you said to ensure people are always treated with the highest standards of respect in this chamber, and I would ask the Treasurer to reflect on that.
The member for Barker, just going to have you help the House by not interjecting. And I want to hear the Leader of the House.
Under standing orders, Mr Speaker, somebody can't raise a point of order and then open with "it's not a point of order" and then continue to go on.
Yeah. Look, the order. Just members on my members on my left. Members on my left are going to just cease interjecting. Look, the question was. Members on my right. Can everyone just please show some respect into this chamber? It is absolutely ridiculous. Just everyone realise where they are. The question was reflecting on the Treasurer. We dealt with that. Should never have been in the question in the first place. The Treasurer is just going to continue with his answer and refer to all members by their correct title.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The opposition has a lot of nerve asking this government about debt. This government has worked very hard for 3.5 years to get the Liberal debt down by $176 billion. Debt in the last year is $176 billion lower than we inherited from those opposite, and that will save the people of Australia $60 billion in interest costs, Mr Speaker. They've got a lot of nerve. When we came to office, they had debt as a share of GDP at nearly 45%. We've got it down to 37%. And when it comes to the $1 trillion of debt that they left us, Mr Speaker—
Order. The Deputy Leader of the Opposition, we've dealt with disorderly, and I don't want to have to remove you, but I will if that sort of language continues.
Under the last budget, the pre-election outlook of those opposite in 2022, they had debt crossing the $1 trillion threshold 2 years ago. And because of our efforts, because of our surpluses, our spending restraint, banking the upward revisions to revenue, we've been able to delay that by a couple of years, Mr Speaker, and get peak gross debt to GDP down from 45 to 37. We've got $176 billion less debt than those opposite had, and that's saving the Australian people in interest, Mr Speaker. And so the idea that we would take lectures on debt from those opposite is preposterous, after the mess that they've left us and the efforts that we have put in to cleaning up that mess, Mr Speaker. Now, I think the question from the member for Fairfax partly explains why. In all of the commentary we've seen in recent days about the shambles over there, in every long list of possible deputy leaders and shadow treasurers, the member for Fairfax isn't on it. The member for Fairfax is the only person considered incapable of retaining his spot as the deputy leader of the Liberal Party, Mr Speaker. But he should take some comfort from the fact, that the last guy who failed as shadow treasurer now considers himself entitled to a promotion.
Give the call to the member for Moore.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. What developments have there been in the economy and the Albanese government's economic plan? How does this compare with other approaches?
Call to the Treasurer.
Thanks, Mr Speaker, and once again to the outstanding member for Moore for his question and for his focus on the big issues in our economy and in our society. This is a government which is focused on the big challenges in our economy, even if those opposite are not. And even though inflation is much lower than when we came to office, we do know that it is higher and more persistent than we would like it to be. We know that productivity has ticked up a bit in recent quarters, but for 2 decades now, our economy has not been as productive as we need it to be. And we know that the global economy is unpredictable and volatile as well. And so these 3 challenges guide our economic plan. They're guiding our work on the budget as well. Now, as I said in an earlier answer, we have made progress on budget repair, getting the Liberal debt down, but we know that there is more work to do. We have made progress on policies to boost productivity, but once again, we know that there's more work to do, including in the next budget, Mr Speaker. And we're helping with the cost of living because we know that people are still under pressure. We were reminded of that in recent data, and that's why we're boosting bulk billing. It's why we're boosting superannuation for low-income earners. And it's also why we are rolling out 2 more tax cuts for 14 million Australian taxpayers. From 1 July, every one of those taxpayers gets another tax cut, and they will get another one the year after as well. Now, Mr Speaker, those are the tax cuts that the member for Hume opposed, and he said that he would repeal if he got a chance. It was part of the member for Hume's election platform for higher income taxes, bigger deficits and more debt. And that's especially relevant today because it was the member for Hume himself who told David Spears only in March, and I'm quoting, "The best indicator of future performance is past performance." That's what the member for Hume said. That should send a shiver up the spine of every Liberal and every Australian, Mr Speaker. That sense of entitlement that defines the member for Hume is only matched by the cloud of incompetence which surrounds him, Mr Speaker. And that's why I'm not sure that Senator Patterson—
Order. The member for Bowman will cease interjecting.
That's why I'm not sure that Senator Patterson was being especially helpful to the Liberal cause when he described the member for Hume, and I'm quoting, as the smartest policy brain in shadow cabinet. The smartest policy brain in shadow cabinet, Mr Speaker. You can read that 1 or 2 ways. I don't know what's more worrying, that it's false or that it might be true, Mr Speaker, as the Energy Minister says. Mr Speaker, we are focused on the big issues in our economy, the big challenges in our economy. We're focused on the numbers in the budget. Those opposite are focused on the numbers in the Liberal Party room. And it reminds us once again, they can rearrange the clowns all they like over there, Mr Speaker. It will still be the same 3-ring circus.
Call to the honourable member for Riverina.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Why hasn't anybody at all in the Albanese government taken responsibility and apologised for failing to deliver the $275 energy bill reduction promised to Australian families?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for the question, and I'm particularly grateful for the interest shown by the National Party in my portfolio, Mr Speaker. To paraphrase my favourite tailor, it's actually sweet all the time you spend on me. It's actually romantic, Mr Speaker.
Order.
I won't be thinking—
Order.
Yeah, they're on to me. Mr Speaker, I won't be
Order.
thinking about the National Party on Saturday, even if they're thinking about me on Valentine's Day, because the obsession is just a little bit over the top, Mr Speaker. But I wish them all the best. Oh, here he is. What's the matter, Sport?
Order. Order. Members on my right. The members on my right. The member for Wannon is entitled to a point of order. The member for Barker is now warned and won't be here if he interjects one more time. Okay. The member for Wannon will take his point of order.
Speaker, it goes to relevance. It was a very specific and direct question, and I would like you to ask the minister to come back to it, especially the $275 part.
Yes, I agree with the member for Wannon. It was a question, but the problem I have with these questions are they are bordering on asking for an opinion, as they are in that category under Standing Order 98. D, number 1. So I'm just trying to work within the standing orders, but these questions are very difficult for me to oversee because they're asking for an opinion or a reason, and it's a lot different to when you ask a fact or a figure question. That's all I'm saying. So the Valentine's Day was not part of the question, so thank goodness. So may the minister please just return to the question. He's had the preamble, and I'll ask him to return to the subject of the topic.
Just pointing out, Mr Speaker, I'm very grateful for the question, and I'm grateful to the National Party, especially as the Shadow Minister hasn't bothered to ask me a question all year, Mr Speaker. But I get plenty of questions from the National Party, not from my part-time Shadow Minister, full-time Deputy Leader candidate, Mr Speaker. But
Order.
To deal with the question, Mr Speaker,
Order. Members on my
as
left.
I said in my previous answer, energy prices have been high around the world, including in Australia. And so, as I said in my previous answer, decided to do something about it by providing energy bill relief opposed by those opposite. Our policy is to introduce more energy, 7.7 gigawatts introduced to the grid, not promised, planned, in development, connected, Mr Speaker, to the grid operating, as opposed to those opposite, particularly the member for Hume, who oversaw 4 gigawatts of dispatchable power leave the grid and 1 gigawatt come on. So our plan is more of the cheapest form of energy and the fastest to deploy. Their plan has several parts. More of the most expensive form of energy.
We've had one point of order on relevance. The member for Gippsland, I'd like him to state the point of order.
Speaker, the minister is defying your ruling to be relevant to the question.
Once again, I explained to the House the difficulty with these broad questions. They're not narrow. They are not narrow questions. They're asking for a broad question that the minister is giving a broad answer to, but it would assist the House if the minister could not refer to government necessarily opposition policy, because he wasn't asked about opposition policy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Simply pointing out that recognising energy prices are too high, there is an obligation on governments and oppositions to do something about it. But we have very different plans.
Order.
Our plan is more energy, and we are getting more energy on. 7.7 gigawatts connected, 4 gigawatts off, only 1 gigawatt on under them. Their other plan, the other part of their plan, is to sweat coal-fired power for longer. That is their plan. They're open about it. That is unreliable. That is a threat to reliability of the system. Today, Mr Speaker, today, as we speak, we have 2.9 gigawatts of coal-fired power broken down. 4 units, or 1 unit at Eraring, 1 unit at Vales Point, 2 units at Yulorn and 3 units at Gladstone, all not working. And for some of those haven't been working for weeks, Mr Speaker. That is a threat to reliability. We want to replace that energy and get more new energy on. They want that to last for longer. That means higher bills. That means more pressure on Australian families. That means more pressure on Australian industry and more pressure on rural and regional Australians. We have a better plan.
Give the call to the honourable member for Aston.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Defence.
How is the Albanese government delivering for defence, and what are the alternative approaches?
Give the call to the Minister for Defence Industry, the Minister for Pacific Island Affairs and the Minister representing the Minister for Defence.
I thank the member for their question.
Order.
The highest duty of any government is to defend the Australian people and safeguard our national interest. And, Mr Speaker, the Albanese Labor government is laser-focused on delivering this through record defence investments, our reform agenda and getting the equipment our ADF needs into their hands sooner. Speaker, we're delivering warships way ahead of schedule. We're producing autonomous Ghost Shark submarines right now to safeguard our maritime approaches. We're rolling missiles out of an Aussie factory and building a second one right now. And we're acquiring counter-drone capabilities in record time. Now, Speaker, I'm asked about alternate approaches. While we've been busy delivering, what's the former Shadow Defence Minister been up to? He certainly hasn't been asking many questions in Parliament. 3 defence questions in 285 days. Now, to be fair, I think he's actually learned from his disastrous time as the Shadow Treasurer. Some would reflect and try and improve their performance, but not the member for Hume. He's decided the simplest solution is to just disappear. You can't fail if no one knows you're the Shadow Defence Minister. 3 defence questions in 285 days. Clearly his focus has been elsewhere. One thing is crystal clear. His focus is self-interest, not the national interest. So, Speaker, let's summarise our approach to defence compared to the member for Hume's record.
Order. The member for
Speaker,
Herbert.
we're acquiring stealth fighters. He was a stealth Shadow Minister. We're investing record amounts in our submarines as part of the silent service. He was a silent defence spokesperson. We have the Nulka that imitates warships to decoy missiles. He imitated Facebook followers. We're forging ammunition and shells. He used documents that, let's say, weren't real.
Order. Order. When the House comes... Order. Order. Members on my right, the Minister for Infrastructure, the Minister for Climate Change. The Minister will just pause. I want to hear from the manager.
You probably don't, but on relevance, the Minister's not being relevant to the question and he's indulging in fake news, and I'd ask you to pull him to order and sit him down if he can't answer a serious question. No. Calm down, mate.
Order. The manager doesn't need to add when he's raising points of order. Just going to remind the Minister he was asked about other approaches. I've given him some leeway. Just make sure his answer is being directly relevant to what he was asked about. Perhaps update the House on policy.
Thanks, Speaker, and I'll keep talking about our approach to defence compared to the alternative one. Speaker, we're investing in better camouflage for the Army.
Order.
He camouflaged power prices. We're increasing long-range strike for the Navy. He's launched a close-range strike on the opposition leader.
Order.
We're getting new ships, new missiles and new drones. He got a new haircut. We're focused on defence. He's blowing up the Liberal Party. Speaker, we're focused on the defence of the nation. They're just embroiled in their divisions and putting their self-interest ahead of the national interest.
Order. The member for Gippsland and Cowper are now on warnings alongside the member for Barker. Give a call to the member for Monash.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Mother of 3, Pushpan Jali, told the Herald Sun that Labor's interest rate rises have, quote, already affected us 3 times. My kids used to do swimming, karate and soccer, but now they only go to swimming because the 3 activities were out of our budget. It's like we are just living our lives to pay the mortgage and nothing else. Meanwhile, the Clean Energy Regulator is looking to spend $500,000 to upgrade fancy meeting rooms. Prime Minister, when Australians are being asked to tighten their belts, why can't this Labor government?
Give the call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Monash for her question. And indeed, I hope that the member has the integrity to say to the member who she asks about that, to be fair to the member, she was not here when her opponent, so she mightn't be aware because it's pretty unbelievable, that this Treasurer on budget night handed down a position to have top-up tax cuts, a tax cut this July and another tax cut next July, after this Treasurer came into the House and moved legislation to readjust the tax cuts to make sure that low and middle income earners got a fair crack, and it was taken from the top to give them a crack.
Order.
That's what this Treasurer did. Now, it is unbelievable that at the time, the shadow Treasurer that night of the budget went and did interviews and said that they were opposed to the tax cuts. Yep. And then did AM the next morning and said that they would actually legislate, if they were elected, to increase the taxes of low and middle income earners in particular, but all 14 million Australians. So I hope that the member for Monash told the constituent or the person mentioned in the Herald Sun that was the case. Because what we have done is understand that people are under financial pressure, but you can have two approaches to that. You can see grievance and try to just feed it, or what you can do is try to address it. What we do is try to address it by lifting up cost of living measures. That's why we've provided energy bill relief. That's why we've provided cheaper medicines. That's why we've provided the 20% cut in student debt. That's why we've tripled the bulk billing incentive. That's why we've opened Medicare urgent care clinics. That's why we have cheaper medicines. That's why we have a batteries program to assist with reducing energy bills as well. All of those measures are what we have done.
Durack.
The other thing we have done is to provide each and every single year that we have been in office for an increase in the minimum wage, something that those opposite, the coalition, whoever has sat in the Liberal Party leadership chair, has never ever put in a submission to the Fair Work Commission saying that wages should be increased for people on the minimum wage. That's the big difference. We want people to earn more and keep more of what they earn, and we want cost of living relief, all of it opposed by those opposite, regardless of who sits at the front.
The member for Herbert has had a very good go today, and this week he'll leave the chamber under 94A. Order. That kind of interjection is highly disorderly, and we're not having it. We'll hear from the honourable member for Chisholm with her question.
Thank you so much, Speaker. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Women. How is the Albanese Labor government supporting women in the workplace and strengthening their rights at work? Are there other approaches that could jeopardise this progress?
The call to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government representing the Minister for Women.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. And can I thank the member for Chisholm, and can I just say what an absolute pleasure it is to look at our backbench and our front bench and see so many women representing their constituencies here in this place. It's not the first time that I've made this point in this chamber, but it bears repeating that the Albanese Labor government is the first female-majority cabinet with the first female-majority government in Australia's history. The gender equity within the Labor Party is a result of decades of purposeful work. I know we're still a day away from Friday the 13th, so I'll try not to spook those opposite. They're doing a pretty good job of having done that themselves this week. But I do want to mention affirmative action. Mr Speaker, in 1994, the Australian Labor Party first introduced affirmative action for women. Now, over 30 years later, you can see the results of that decision before you. A party and a government that is full to the brim with bright, talented women contributing to our parliament and standing up for their communities. And do you know why it is important to have women in the room making decisions, women in leadership positions? It's because of the difference it makes. The difference it makes to women. It means we can deliver not only for them here, but out there, which is the most important thing we can do. Under this government, we have made significant progress with the gender pay gap. Record low of 11.5%. In 2022, we were ranked 23rd. Now, 43rd, we're now ranked 13th. We've expanded paid parental leave and we're paying it on super on it. 1st of January, we delivered 3-day universal childcare. We've delivered pay increases in women-dominated industry like aged care and early education. We've delivered a tax cut for every taxpayer, 90% of women better off, and will deliver further tax cuts this year. But I wonder who was the shadow treasurer, in fact, who decided that those opposite would vote against tax cuts, particularly tax cuts for women. It was obviously the member for Hume. But that's not all. He, of course, is also one of the architects of the opposition's return to work policy and has also, in fact, been one of the chief opponents to affirmative action in the Liberal Party. I give you the smartest policy brain in the Liberal Party. And in the last 9 months, what we've seen is persistent undermining of the Liberal Party's first ever female leader from day one. Now, that's not my words. That's not my words.
Order.
That is the words of your shadow Attorney-General. And I couldn't agree more.
Order.
Persistent undermining from
Members
day
on my
one.
left will cease
While the Liberals
interjecting.
engage in the embarrassing spectacle that we see before us, Labor is getting on with the work, and we are working every day for the women of this country.
The call to the honourable member for Bradfield.
Thank you. My question is for the Minister representing the Environment Minister. Minister, late last year this parliament passed important reforms to our nature laws, the EPBC Act. The changes allow states to be delegated approval powers that are traditionally federal ones. Your government sold this to us on the promise that strong, outcomes-focused national environmental standards would be in place before the states acquired those powers. Will the government once more assure the Australian people that the states will not be given increased powers until all of these critical standards are finalised?
The call to the Minister representing the Minister for the Environment.
Yeah, thanks very much, Speaker, and I thank the member for Bradfield for the question. In terms of the laws that were passed, first of all, on the concept of delegating approvals and assessment powers to the states, that did exist under the old Act. But under the old Act, you effectively had to entirely delegate, and the concept of only delegating specific functions is something that was new under what went through. In terms of the progress of both standards and any concept of delegation to the states, if I can go through the pace as to how each of those works. Getting the new environmental standards is our #1 priority. That's where the pace is occurring. The new legislation comes into effect in tranches over the next year, and there'll be opportunities for people to be engaging on the development of the new national environmental standards, and they are the backbone of the legislation that went through. Work is already well underway on developing the standards, and we're working through. There's been in the order of around 700 submissions that have been made on those standards, which we're now working through. In terms of the delegation, the concept of there are two different forms of delegation. You've got delegation potentially of assessments and you've got delegation of approvals. The delegation of assessments is something that would have to be in place and functioning before a delegation of approvals was even being considered. So in terms of the order, it's the standards that are happening at pace now, and anything in terms of delegation, there would have to have been for some time a functioning assessments agreement before there was consideration being given of approvals.
Give the call to the member for Barton.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and Territories. How is the Albanese Labor government working with local councils to support communities, and how does this compare to other approaches?
Give a call to the Minister for Emergency Management, the Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and Territories.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Barton for the question, because before she arrived here, she was a councillor at Georges River Council, and she knows how important it is to fully fund local councils so that they can support our local communities. Our government strongly supports a sustainable local government sector, because we know that a strong and sustainable local government sector supports our communities to thrive. Mr Speaker, numbers matter, and those opposite are painfully aware of that. But we on this side of the House are focused on different numbers, numbers that matter to the lives of Australians. Numbers like $3.4 billion of direct investment in local government this year through financial assistance grants, ensuring councils have access to funds to deliver the services communities rely on. Those opposite froze indexation on financial assistance grants when they were in government, ripping nearly $1 billion out of the sector. In contrast, Mr Speaker, we are doubling the Roads to Recovery program, delivering $1 billion annually to support councils across the country. We've increased road black spot funding to $150 million a year, meaning more money for those dangerous sections of our local roads. And we're delivering our new $200 million Safer Local Road and Infrastructure program, with Tranche 3 announced just last week. Most importantly, we're delivering transparent grant programs available to every council across the country, from growing regions and thriving suburbs to regional and urban precincts and partnerships program. Whilst the previous coalition government made reckless commitments that councils couldn't deliver, and we know of the colour-coded spreadsheets from grant programs, from everything from connectivity to infrastructure. And who could forget that doozy of regional grants being given to the North Sydney pool, which I don't think is open yet. Mr Speaker, as a former local mayor, I know how important it is to have productive relationships with all levels of government, and I take a very different approach to those opposite. We know when those opposite were in government, the member for Hume was forced to apologise to the Lord Mayor of Sydney after claiming she'd driven up carbon emissions by spending $15 million on travel. Turns out councillors had only spent close to $6,000. Now, I'm no Rhodes Scholar, and I didn't study economics at Oxford. I attended a humble but mighty public school, but by my rough calculations, that's a $14,994,000 mistake. Mr Speaker, as I said, numbers matter in this place, and I heard the member for Hume described as a numbers man this morning. Geez, I'd want to hope he gets his numbers right this time.
Give the call to the order. Give the call to the member for Curtin.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Many Australians increasingly feel angry, divided and isolated. Social media platforms play a large part in this, driven by algorithms that control our attention, amplify hate and create echo chambers. The minimum age for social media is a start, but there's more to do, such as the promised duty of care or giving people more control over the algorithms imposed on them. What more will your government do to build safe and positive online spaces to urgently protect and repair our social fabric?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Curtin for her question and for her interest in what is, I think, one of the critical challenges facing not just us here in Australia but globally as well. How we deal with this new technology that can make an enormous difference, enables us to be better connected than we have ever been, enables us to get information at our fingertips that we simply would have had to have gone to the library or gone through a much more time-extensive route. But our social media ban is a start, and the member's right that we need to do more. The social media ban, though, has exceeded the government's expectations. The fact that 4.7 million accounts either got shut down or paused in the initial stages, and the ongoing work is occurring across those 10 platforms. It's about giving Australian kids more time away from the pool of recommender systems. It's about giving them more time to develop real friendships with real people and to learn how to get along with people who might have different views or experiences. And the fact that it's being replicated around the world, with Spain the latest country to get on board, shows Australia leading the way in this area. Our upcoming digital duty of care will also put the onus on platforms, though, to proactively protect all Australians from harm. And this can have a range of areas: grooming of people, the algorithms pushing people towards more and more extreme views. And I was part of the American Leadership Dialogue many years ago at Stanford University with someone who was a whistleblower at Facebook, who spoke about the impact that it had in pushing people towards extremism and the danger that represented. We need to assert as a country, not just as a government, that social media has a social responsibility, because these algorithms can cause enormous issues. They can amplify rather than reduce prejudice. We see in some of the debate about issues that should be able to be discussed much more respectfully, such as the Middle East and other issues of conflict, people being pushed into more and more extreme positions, people being pushed in ways in which they presented as facts, things that simply are not true as well. Social media does not optimise for social cohesion. It does have a social responsibility. We all need to work hard as a community to ensure we're acting with thought and with kindness, whether in real life or online. People will say things online they would never say to your face, and that is a real issue that we have to confront. And I thank very much the member for Curtin for raising this issue, and I say to her and others in this chamber as well, this is something that really should be right above politics, that we need to work on as a society, because together we all have an interest on behalf of not just ourselves, but more importantly as well, the generations to come.
Call to the honourable member for Griffith.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. How is the Albanese Labor government modernising our energy grid? Why is this important after a decade of mismanagement, and what are the risks?
Give a call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker. And the honourable member for Griffith will be particularly pleased to know, given we launched the cheaper home batteries policy in her electorate, her now electorate, wasn't her electorate at the time, it now is, in April, that as of today, 230,890 Australian households have installed a cheaper home battery, reducing their bills by up to 90% and in many cases getting a rebate instead of a bill. Now, those figures are not included in the 7.7 gigawatts of dispatchable energy that we have added to the grid, to go to the honourable member's question about progress. And we've seen a sign of that progress in the last quarter of last year, when we hit 51% renewables for the first time. It was also a quarter of record electricity use, more electricity use than ever in Australian history, but the grid coped very well. We saw emissions hit an all-time low as use hit an all-time high, and we also saw wholesale prices fall by 44% to $50 a megawatt, Mr Speaker. Now, the honourable member asked me why this is important after a decade of neglect and what the risks are. Well, I have to say, Mr Speaker, the 50% figure, which we've just hit, was not unpredicted. In fact, in 2018, the Labor Party indicated we would like to get to 50% renewables. And at the time, the then Energy Minister was asked, what will that mean for wholesale prices if we got to 50% renewables? And on the day he was asked, when he was the Minister, wholesale prices were $92 a megawatt. And the member for Hume was asked, what will happen to wholesale prices if we got to 50% of renewable energy? And he said, it will certainly have a huge impact on the wholesale market. It will probably double the wholesale market. In fact, prices have halved since then, Mr Speaker. Double, half, I mean, who cares? It's all the same, Mr Speaker. It's all the same. Now,
Order.
This is good news for the member for Farrer, Mr Speaker, because numbers aren't the strong point of the member for Hume. When he's not getting them wrong, he's hiding them by changing the law or making them up, like he did when it comes to the Lord Mayor's travel bill for the City of Sydney, and then blaming his staff for it, Mr Speaker. The only thing that the member for Hume has more trouble with than numbers is working out what Facebook account he's logged into at any particular time, Mr Speaker. It's very confusing sometimes. It's very hard work.
Order.
The trouble is, there's very little cost to be paid for that sort of mistake, but Australians are paying the price of the member for Hume's mismanagement. Those 4 gigawatts that left the grid and only 1 gigawatt come on, we're still paying the price. Australian industry is paying the price. Australian households are paying the price. Australian households know that we need to get on with the job of the energy transition after a decade of denial and delay. That's what they asked us to do in May. That's what we'll keep doing while those opposite are focused on themselves.
Give the call to the member for Durack.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Single mum Kylie has told the West Australian of the impact of Labor's cost of living crisis, and I quote, "I had no money and was left behind in my rent and couldn't even provide a birthday cake for my kids. The cost of even a small shop at supermarkets is ridiculous." End of quote. Meanwhile, the Department of Foreign Affairs spent $17,295 on a luxury party boat in Sydney Harbour. Prime Minister, when Australians are tightening their belts, why can't this Labor government?
The call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Durack for her question. Indeed, when it comes to Kylie's circumstances, we on this side empathise with everyone in Australia who are doing it tough. Many people are doing it tough
Order. The member
in
for
Australia,
Lindsay
and
will
that's
cease
why
interjecting.
we seek to do something about it. Now, I have no idea, I'm not aware of the circumstances around Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, but Foreign Affairs, we host people. We hosted someone over the last couple of days, and I assure you the cost was a lot more than that for the President of Israel to visit here. That is what governments do through the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. We host people, and certainly I have hosted international leaders here and delegations. When it comes to Kylie's circumstances, though, if Kylie is in work, Kylie would have got a tax cut that, given those circumstances that Kylie speaks about, chances are she wouldn't have got anything under their government, of which the member for Durack was a part. She doesn't have the same excuse as the member for Monash. She was here when she implemented tax cuts at the high end and voted against a tax cut for Kylie. She voted against Kylie getting energy bill relief. She voted against Kylie getting support with cheaper medicines if she has it. If Kylie has kids at school, she's opposed to and regards as waste the fair funding that we have for every public school in Australia for the first time. If Kylie in Western Australia visits an urgent care clinic, and I was at Ellenbrook on the weekend, and in Ellenbrook with the member for Hasluck, we went to the new urgent care clinic there that's already seen. Thousands of people will go through that clinic in a growing area of Western Australia. We on this side of the chamber don't just empathise, we do something about it. Those on that side of the chamber oppose every cost of living measure that we have put forward, regard it all as waste, whether it's the record women's health program that we've established, the support for Medicare, the support for education, but school funding, free TAFE or university hubs. They oppose real wages and minimum wages being increased, and they oppose tax cuts for every Australian.
Give the call to the member for Spence.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Education. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to cut student debt and make university more accessible for students in the outer suburbs and regions? Why is it important to be united in delivering these changes, and what are the risks of alternative approaches?
Call to the Minister for Education.
Well, thanks very much, Mr Speaker, and can I thank my friend, the sensational member for Spence, for his question. As he knows, we've cut student debt by 20%. And when we announced that we would cut student debt by 20% for 3 million Australians, the Liberal Party immediately opposed it. And the then Shadow Treasurer put out a statement where, remember, he said this: "There are no free lunches in economics." And then proceeded to announce a policy of free lunches, but for bosses. That was, I promise I'm not making it up, that was the big vision. Escargot for CEOs. No wonder the Australian people chewed them up and spat them out, but obviously they've learnt nothing, because Julius Caesar had more support from his senators than what we've seen going on over there today. Now, Mr Speaker, I'm asked about how we're going to help more young Australians get a crack at going to university. I can tell you, as I said on Monday, more Aussies will go to university this year than ever before. But I can also tell you there are more university study hubs today than ever before. We promised to double them, and we've done it, and then some. There's now 69 of them operating across the country. And to give you an idea of how important they are, think about this. And I should say one of them is in Elizabeth, in the member for Spencer's electorate. In Elizabeth Bay in Sydney, 70% of young adults in their 20s or 30s have a uni degree today. In Elizabeth, in South Australia, in the member for Spencer's electorate, it's 7%, not 70, 7%. These hubs are about changing that by bringing uni closer to where people live. And I know that my mate, the member for Spence, gets that. That's why he fought so hard for it. That's why he got so emotional at the opening of it. I'm sure he won't mind me telling people he shed a tear or two on the day. And that's because he loves his community and he knows what this will do and the lives that it will change. And Mr Speaker, I know you love your community too, and you get it as well. We opened a study hub in Inala in your electorate a couple of weeks ago, and we got a chance to meet the young people from Glenalla State High. This is for them and kids like them who dream big. And the fact is, think about it, guys. Just think about it. Talent is distributed equally. It's opportunity that's not. And it's things like this, it's hubs like this that are about changing that.
Call to the honourable member for Hinkler.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Did Australian families see the $275 reduction in their energy bills the Prime Minister promised 97 times?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Order.
There's no getting away from me, Mr Speaker. No getting away from me. I thank the honourable member for the question. I thank the Prime Minister for the opportunity to take it. What Australians have had access to, Mr Speaker, is 230,000 cheaper home batteries to reduce their bills to nothing. Including 44% of them, Mr Speaker, in rural and regional Australia, and including in the honourable member's home state of Queensland, 55% of cheaper home batteries have been in rural and regional Australia. 55% in Queensland. The people those opposite are meant to represent.
Order. Order. The member for Lingiari. I'll keep an eye out for props, don't worry about that. But the minister has concluded, so the member for Gippsland will also resume his seat. And the member for Cowper is going to leave the chamber. I just specifically said don't mention props. You're on a warning. Not appropriate behaviour. And I warned at the beginning of question time. This is what happens. There's consequences for actions. We shall now hear from the honourable member for Dunkley.
My question is to the Minister for Social Services. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering for Australian families in social services, and what puts this at risk?
Call to the Minister for Social Services.
Thanks so much, Mr Speaker, and I really want to thank the member for Dunkley for her question, because I know not only is she a great supporter of the work that this government is doing on family and domestic violence, but she knows how important the increases have been to pensions and other payments in her electorate. And Mr Speaker, I'm very proud to say that on this side of the House we are absolutely focused on helping Australian families. That means up to $5,000 extra if you're on a pension. It means $1,800 extra in rent assistance. It means cheaper medicines, cheaper childcare, higher wages, lower taxes, 5% deposits, cuts to student debt, free TAFE, a whole range of measures to take pressure off families, including almost doubling the amount of paid parental leave since we've come to government. Australians getting paid parental leave are about $12,000 better off under this Prime Minister. So after 40 weeks of carrying a baby, mums and dads can look forward to 6 months off. But after 39 weeks of carrying the Liberal Party, I'd say this Leader of the Opposition can also look forward to a little bit of time off from the job. It's interesting that the member for Hume has said that a crusade was needed to attract more women to the Liberal Party. He said, we absolutely need more women in the party at every level. I don't think he meant every level. Let's not forget, it's the member for Hume that trashed the economic reputation of the Liberal Party. He went to the last election promising both higher taxes and higher deficits. He's the man who hid energy price increases. He released those dodgy documents around Clover Moore's travel. There's the Jamland saga, there's the dodgy water buybacks. He said he lived up the road from Naomi Wolf at Oxford. She wasn't there at the time. It was reported that a prominent Liberal woman said of the member for Hume, he is a caricature of a Liberal male, males who have managed to progressively alienate women from the Liberal Party. It does seem to me, Mr Speaker, that any day of the week an average bloke in the Liberal Party wins over a woman, and the only real qualification you need are the XY chromosomes.
Order. When the House comes to order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Western Sydney mum Kate has told the ABC that her family are now having to rely on a community pantry to make ends meet, saying she has, quote, relied pretty heavily on them in the last couple of years. Meanwhile, last year the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade spent $17,930 on a Kylie Minogue impersonator at a Wellington food festival. Prime Minister, when Australians are tightening their belts, why can't this Labor government?
The call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for Lindsay.
Order.
I thank the member for Lindsay for her question. It goes to Kate being concerned about costs of living, something that we share that concern, which is why we're doing everything we can to help people like Kate, the energy bill relief, the cheaper batteries, the cheaper medicines, the free TAFE, the making sure that tax cuts are put in place, the urgent care clinics, including many that are in Western Sydney. The member also refers to waste. I hope that if she does know Kate, she tells Kate about the $31 billion in cost blowouts associated with Inland Rail, the $29 billion in cost blowouts for the NBN. At least something was being created there, but we actually paid the French $4 billion to cancel, to not build the submarines. We paid $1.8 billion out to victims of robo-debt. We paid $444 million to the Great Barrier Reef Foundation without a tender process or even consultation with the foundation itself. We spent $660 million on commuter car parks, including where there was no railway station. $423 million on an offshore processing contract awarded to a firm registered to a shack on Kangaroo Island. Now, I'm very affectionate about Kangaroo Island these days, Mr Speaker,
Order.
But $423 million for a shack registered a company there. $100 million on sports rights funding based on the colour-coded spreadsheet, $70 million on a COVID-safe app that found only two unique positive COVID cases. $30 million for Western Sydney Airport land, remember that? 10 times its value. 10 times its value. And of course, during COVID, the $20 billion of JobKeeper paid to companies who were increasing their profits, not having it decrease. When we talk about waste, the Liberal Party are the experts.
The call to the honourable member for Whitlam.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is for the Prime Minister. What has been the focus of the Albanese Labor government over the past fortnight, and how does this differ to other priorities?
Give the call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Whitlam for her question and for the fantastic contribution she is making to represent the people of the south part of the Illawarra and the Southern Highlands. As a Labor government, when we come to Canberra here, our focus is on delivering for the communities that we represent and delivering for the national interest in line with Australian values, turning the promises that we took to the Australian people that saw us elected in May 2022 and then re-elected with a bigger majority in May 2025 into the progress that people want to see. We know that there's always more to do, more we can achieve together, and Australians can be sure that that will always be our focus. I lead a government that is orderly, that is cohesive, that has proper cabinet processes, that work as a unit together, that make decisions after getting proper information and make sure that it gets implemented. And that is what our focus is every time we come here to Canberra. But those opposite have shown that their focus is on each other and on themselves. We have a declaration, or not quite a declaration. I watched last night, it was pretty extraordinary. Went out there, a resignation, and then no declaration of why he was resigning, and certainly no policy alternatives being put forward. And that, of course, was on, in terms of timing, on the day that President Herzog was visiting this parliament. Now, that is consistent with the sort of disruption that we've seen, and the timing and the priorities don't seem to matter to those opposite. On the National Day of Mourning for victims of the anti-Semitic Bondi terrorist attack, they announced that the coalition was splitting for the second time. On the day of the funeral of the well-respected across this parliament member for Higgins, the members for Hume and Canning were publicly plotting against their leader at a house in Melbourne. The member for Hume, of course, has been a part of all of this, and today, on the day of the Closing the Gap report, we have the call for a spill and a range of resignations from the front bench. And tomorrow on the morning in which members of the Stolen Generation will attend the breakfast at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, at 9 o'clock, those opposite will be making calls before then and filing into their party room in order to either depose or reaffirm who the leader of the Labor Party is.
Order. Order. The Prime Minister's time has concluded his answer. Just resume. The Prime Minister.
He's not going to be Leader of the House, let alone Leader of Government, Mr Speaker, and I ask that further questions be placed on the notice paper.
Order. Members can leave the chamber as quickly and as quietly as possible. We shall move to the discussion of matter of public importance. I have received a letter from the honourable member for Page, proposing that a definite matter of public importance be submitted to the House for discussion, namely this government's portrayal of Australians due to higher energy costs and other cost of living pressures. I call upon those honourable members who approve of the proposed discussion to rise in their places and give the call to the honourable member for Page.
Thank you, Speaker. And I know you're aware, I know everyone on this side of the House is aware, I know that the Australian community is aware that cost of living is in a crisis in this country, Speaker. It is in a crisis. It's in a crisis for family budgets. It's in a crisis for small business in Australia, that the cost of everything is just going up and going up and going up. And I want to focus on a couple of things through this next 10 minutes, Speaker. One is obviously the focus of this is energy. I want to talk about the failures of this government on energy policy, but also just want to note the too, Speaker, that just this week we saw the mortgage rates go up for Australian families. They've gone up, and I want to note too, Speaker, I know you'll know this, that interest rates around the world are going down in most countries. They're coming down in just about every country around the world, except Australia. And it's commented on by most economists around Australia and the Reserve Bank themselves that a lot of this is about government policy right now. So every mortgage went up in Australia this week, Speaker, because of the policies of this Labor government, and the damage that's going to do to family budgets and indeed higher interest rates to business is not good. But Speaker, you can't go past cost of living, you can't go past talking about this government with first talking about the Minister for Energy and Climate Change, Speaker. And their policy, they have an ideological obsession, Speaker, that at the expense, a $9 trillion plan to get Australia to net zero 2050, Deputy Speaker. Now, besides, I'll go into some of the costs of that and why that is so destructive, but before I do, in regional Australia, I'm very conscious too that involves physically 60 million solar panels to be built around predominantly all in regional Australia, and 20,000 wind turbines as well, Deputy Speaker. And a big part of the cost, the Minister likes to get up and say renewable energy is cheap or free. It's not, Deputy Speaker, and he's very misleading in saying that, because one of the major costs behind it is the new transmission system, 20,000 kilometres of new transmission system, Deputy Speaker. Now, why do they need new transmission system? Because all this generative capacity that they're building with these 60 million solar panels and these 20,000 wind turbines are being built where there isn't transmission systems, and they're being built where there aren't poles and wires. And the cost of that is enormous. So that's about 50% of a bill is around some of those delivery costs. But he says it's free. He's misleading. He knows that, Deputy Speaker, and he continues to mislead the Australian public on that. Now, what we're already seeing, we can talk about families, we can talk about the fact that they get their energy bill every quarter and are shocked and are horrified about how much it's going up, Deputy Speaker. But the other thing that's going on around Australia is business are feeling it, and especially big business and heavy business. People who are energy intensive, the smelters around Australia, the refineries around Australia. You could go up and down the coast of Western Australia with the nickel industry, the lead industry. You go to South Australia with the steelworks, the lead industry in Port Pirie. You can go around the east coast of Australia, Tomago, a more recent one. Now, all of them, Deputy Speaker, all of them have either paused what they do or have asked or said that they need government assistance. What does that say, Deputy Speaker? That says that something is going seriously wrong if those businesses unanimously are saying that they need government assistance to keep going. And it all comes back to this obsession by this government and this obsession by the Minister about emission reductions. Now, Deputy Speaker, we acknowledge that we should do our fair share of emissions reductions, but their obsession has us leading the world in emission reductions. And I want to highlight 3 countries, Deputy Speaker, who are not signed up to the policies of this Labor government. 3 countries who are saying we're not going to do what Australia is going to do with emission reductions. And those 3 countries are China, India and the United States, Deputy Speaker. Now, all of those countries have said we are not signed up to that. And they're not signed up to it because they know the expense of it and they know the unattainability of that. Now, just China just to take them as one example, Deputy Speaker, the emissions in China go up more every year than Australia's total emissions. I'll repeat that. It's important to understand that. The emissions in China go up more every year than Australia's total emissions. Now, this obsession by the minister and this obsession by this government means that we are going. Nothing we do. We want to do our fair share, but nothing we do, Deputy Speaker, will change the temperature of this globe in Australia, because we are only just over 1% of total emissions. So yes, we should be committed to do our fair share. Yes, we could contribute as a good global citizen, but nothing we do, given the size of our economy and the size and the emissions that we emit compared to any other country, will change anything. But yet, no, that's not a good with the ideological obsession of this minister and this government, Speaker. So, while they might feel good, this is not good. Now, we do have a plan, Speaker. We do have a plan, and a responsible plan, as the opposition on this side of the House. And what we've said we will do is that we will lower emissions by the average of the OECD. So whatever they lower emissions by, we will match that. Not what they say they're going to do, but what they are actually going to do. And we have committed that is the target that we will have. Now, that will mean a difference, though. I mean, this government's obsession means that they are aiming for emission reductions in 2035 by anything between 60 and 70%. Makes them feel good, but the damage, as I've said, that's doing to families and businesses is manifest. Our emission reductions at this rate would mean we'd be getting emissions around the 35%, which again is doing our fair share, but not killing the Australian economy, not killing family budgets at the same time. Now, I've mentioned also at the start here about cost of living pressures, Deputy Speaker, and mentioned mortgage increases, that we know mortgage increases in Australia have gone up this last week because of the policies of this government. But I want to just touch on a couple of others that are doing a lot of damage to cost of living. And one is, it's very dear to a lot of colleagues of mine, especially colleagues who operate within the Murray-Darling Basin, Deputy Speaker. Murray-Darling Basin, one of the great food bowls of the world, not just Australia, but the productivity, the food and fibre grown in the Murray-Darling Basin is quite phenomenal. Now, there are different ideological obsession on this one. Their ideological obsession on the Murray-Darling Basin is that for some reason the River Murray mouth can never close. Now, the bizarreness of that is, before we had the Lock and Weir system built on the River Murray and the Darling, Deputy Speaker, the mouth of the Murray would have closed a lot. And it did close a lot because, of course, what those locks and weirs do is hold back water, so there is a continual amount of water that goes out. But in droughts, that would lock up all the time. So with that ideological obsession, what they're doing now, they are spending, talk about waste money, they are spending billions of dollars, buying water off food producers in this country and fibre producers in this country. Now, I don't think it's hard to work out, Deputy Speaker, that if you were going to stop farmers and stop our producers in the Murray-Darling Basin from growing things, that isn't going to help the cost of those things. Because, as you know, the Minister for Climate Change and Energy wants to talk about supply and demand. Well, I tell you what, if you're growing less of something, guess what? The price of it might go up, Deputy Speaker. And their obsession there is not okay. The other thing I want to talk about, and again with the obsession with the emission reductions, is they already have instituted a ute and SUV tax, Deputy Speaker. That means the cost of SUVs, the cost of utes in this country have already gone up, Speaker, because, again, not because of anything but government policy on this side. So when the tradie wants to go and buy his ute, or the family want to go and buy their SUV, Speaker, that have all gone up, distinct, just a blatant government policy. The other one I also want to talk to about, and it's endemic. The last day of Parliament last year, we saw changes made to the EPBC Act, Deputy Speaker. Now, one thing that this government is sort of in their DNA of Labor, and especially when they have an alliance with the Greens, as they do in the Senate, it's in their DNA. They cannot have more. They cannot have too much red and green tape, Deputy Speaker. They love red and green tape. They love more legislation telling people what they can do and what they can't do. Now, every stakeholder, Deputy Speaker, that I talk to about that is trying to export out of this country, trying to do stuff in this country, every stakeholder I talk to says that this government is making things more difficult and therefore more expensive in the government legislation that they've done for the last 4 years. Now, you don't see all this immediately. Sometimes these legislative changes, and especially the one made with the EPBC Act, we might not see for 3 or 4 years. But this government doesn't understand the economy. They are sending companies and families broke in this country, and shame on them.
I give the call to the Assistant Minister for Mental Health and Suicide Prevention, our rural and regional health.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and it's good to welcome the member for Page back to the dispatch box. And I welcome this matter of public importance today. On this side of the House, we understand the pressures that people and families are facing, which is why we are delivering cost of living relief for all Australians, from more bulk billing to cheaper medicine, student debt relief to supporting people to buy their first home. It's measures delivered by this Labor government that are actually helping people. What is not helping people is a division and chaos from those on the other side. Last week, the member for Page was on the backbench with his national colleagues. Now he's back at the dispatch box. Oh, now he's walking out on the MPI like the Nationals did to Susan Ley. Oh.
The member for Page, just take your seat quietly, please.
The member for Page has found someone who will talk to him. Yes. As I said last week, I'm not sure, I'm confused in this game of musical swivel chairs, but no, this former Deputy Prime Minister you're now speaking to. Okay, that's clear. All right. And right now, Liberals are rushing across this building in and out of offices, trying to do the numbers and topple the first female leader of their party. The first female leader of their party. On this side, we're focused on delivering for all Australians. On that side, and they're focused on themselves. Deputy Speaker, I genuinely thank the member for Page for moving this MPI, and I do hope he stays in the chamber. I'm not sure, is he still here? Stays in the chamber to hear about what this government is delivering for people in his community. I expect he'll probably walk out on me like he did, the Nationals did, to Susan Ley. Yeah. But as the member for Page knows, I'm a frequent visitor to his community, and I rarely come empty-handed. In 2023, we opened the Lismore Medicare Urgent Care Clinic. Walk-in care for urgent but not life-threatening conditions, not like what might happen tomorrow at 9, open 7 days a week over extended hours. And like all Medicare urgent care clinics across the country, it's popular, not like the Coalition. Since opening, 22,966 people have received fully bulk billed care, 100% free. I love Tari. Do they still have the Take 5 cafe? They do. Since opening, 22,966 people have received fully bulk billed care, 100% free, an average of more than 200 people a week, member for Page. But there's more. In 2022, I was in Lismore, where I opened the Medicare Mental Health Centre. Walk-in mental health support and care from clinicians and peer workers, also open 7 days a week over extended hours. And I can share with the member for Page and this House that the Lismore Medicare Mental Health Centre has the highest number of occasions of care of all of the 18 currently open in New South Wales. Just last year, the Lismore Medicare Mental Health Centre provided 34,727 occasions of care, all completely free, at no cost to his constituents. It's our government, Deputy Speaker, that is delivering completely free Medicare-backed services for people all around the country. And I would say to the member for Page, oh no, be more like the member for Riverina and embrace these services in your community. Yeah. He's gone. The member for Riverina welcomed me to his community and joined me at the new Wagga Wagga.
Member
You're not
for
in your seat.
Page.
You're not
This
in your
is your
seat.
MPI. Let's not repeat earlier this week where I had to ask people who put the MPI to leave the chamber. So please, no interjections. I do want to hear the Assistant Minister, just as I heard you.
Be more like the member for Riverina, who welcomed me to his community and joined me, the member for Riverina, who joined me at the new Wagga Wagga Medicare Mental Health Centre, offering free mental health care to people in his community. Deputy Speaker, it's the Albanese Labor government that is focused on delivering affordable health care for all Australians, saving Australians time and money. Deputy Speaker, the Albanese Labor government has made the single largest investment in Medicare since its creation over 40 years ago. $8.5 billion to deliver more bulk billed GP visits every year, hundreds of nursing scholarships and thousands more doctors. Australian patients and families are saving hundreds of dollars a year in out-of-pocket costs. For the first time from the 1st of November last year, our government has expanded bulk billing incentives to all Australians and created an additional new incentive payment for practices that bulk bill every patient. Already over 3,300 general GP practices are now fully bulk billing, 3,300. Over 1,200 of these were previously mixed billing practices, making Medicare even stronger, helping with cost of living pressures and making sure every Australian receives the best health care that they deserve and for free. Deputy Speaker, the Albanese Labor government's Medicare urgent care clinics are genuinely a game changer for Australians. Our government went to the last election promising to open 50 Medicare urgent care clinics. We've delivered 124 free Medicare urgent care clinics across the country, with more to open. And as Assistant Health Minister, I've recently opened clinics in Gladstone in central Queensland, Buderim on the Sunshine Coast, Austral in southwestern Sydney. More than 2.5 million Australians have already been treated at one of Labor's existing urgent care clinics, which, as I said, provide bulk billed care for urgent but non-life-threatening conditions, 7 days a week for extended hours with no appointment needed. In my community on the Central Coast, the Lake Haven Urgent Care Clinic has seen over 31,650 locals since it opened late in 2023. The recently opened Erina Urgent Medicare Clinic, which I opened with Dr Reid, the member for Robertson, has already seen more than 1,700 presentations, opening just before Christmas. And Medicare urgent care clinics are trusted alternatives to emergency departments for families across the country, with around 1 in 4 patients under the age of 15. And Deputy Speaker, as a pharmacist, the sole pharmacist in this place, I'm pleased to update the House on how we are making cheaper medicines even cheaper. With a script now costing no more than $25 under the Pharmaceutical Benefit Scheme, a general prescription co-payment $25, as well as freezing the cost of concession scripts at $7.70 through till the end of this decade to 2030. This is another key cost of living measure delivered by the Albanese government. The last time, Deputy Speaker, scripts were $25, I was working in community pharmacy on the Central Coast in my electorate back in 2004. I know just how much this matters to Australians as a pharmacist, and had we not cut the cost of medicines more than once since coming to government, a single script would now cost more than $50, more than double what it is today. This is real cost of living measures for Australians, making a big difference in communities right around the country. In my electorate alone, locals have saved over $12.7 million on 1.7 million cheaper scripts. That's $12.7 million on 1.7 million cheaper scripts. And I know as a pharmacist that I would see parents come from a visit to the doctor with prescriptions for their children and say, can I share this antibiotic mixture, or can I get this prescription filled and can I delay this one? This means that parents and families are now not being forced to make these decisions, that they can get the medicines, the vital medicines that they and their families need. And Deputy Speaker, in the time I have left, I'd like to talk about the difference that our Medicare mental health centres are making. I mentioned the Medicare Mental Health Centre in Lismore earlier, and the profound difference that's making in access to free care to local people in a community that has been hit by so many natural disasters and the long tail of that affects communities. We've now established 53 Medicare mental health centres across the country. These centres offer free walk-in mental health support and care from a team of clinicians and peer workers. As part of our $1.1 billion mental health election package, we're growing the number of these free centres to 92 across the country. Recently, we've opened centres in Campbelltown in southwest Sydney, Mount Isa in northwest Queensland, Burnie on Tasmania's northwest coast, and Bondi in response to the tragic terrorist attack. These centres mean people get the mental health care they need without the barriers, no cost, no appointment and no referral. Free care when and where it's needed. and that's supported by our new National Early Intervention Service, Medicare Mental Health Check-In, that we have officially launched on the 1st of January this year, and that in a staged way is providing more help for Australians for free. Digital mental health support free for all Australians over the age of 16. Yeah. Deputy Speaker, I am proud as a pharmacist, as a local MP, as an Assistant Health Minister, to be part of a government that has made the biggest investment in Medicare since it was established. A government that has brought mental health into the heart of Medicare and free services into the heart of communities, and that is providing cost of living relief to all Australians.
I give the call to the member for Mallee.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And I just give a shout out to the member for Dobell, a lovely member in this House who works incredibly hard. I'm not going to be able to agree with everything that the member says, of course, because I have a different view on our side of the House. And I note that the member for Dobell spoke quite a bit about medications and, Medicare and clinics and mental health. I really want to focus, however, on a health check for the net zero plan of Labor. And I think that it is time, after 4 years, that the coalition asks the questions. How is this really going? We get a lot of spin from the other side of the chamber, especially from the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. And I've got to say that the experience in my electorate is nothing like the spin that the minister likes to give every question time, I've got to say. So he won't talk about retail energy prices. There's probably a good reason for that. I think so. Because every Australian family knows, and especially in my electorate, that energy prices continue to go up. Choice out in the regions is also another issue that this government is doing nothing about. You might be able to get one tiny gas line and that's it, and you are at the mercy of the company that runs that gas line. So the question that was asked many times in question time today was, how's the $275 reduction in energy actually going across Australia? Well, you know what? We never hear about it. It's never actually spoken about by the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. There is no apology for the fact that in actual fact, energy prices have gone up about $1,300, nowhere near $275 reduction. There is a 40% increase in power bills. Just think about that. We've heard from our side of the House today so many examples of people. These are people. It would be really wonderful if this Labor government could pay attention to the fact that these are people's lives that are being impacted by the rising cost of living, the continuing cost of living. And they're paying for it. They're paying for it in their own energy bills. And for renters, it's worse than anything else. Like, we have the Climate Change and Energy Minister constantly talking about batteries, home batteries. Amazing savings. No renter can afford a home battery, and no pensioner can afford a home battery. And who is paying for those batteries? The taxpayer. Thank you. The member for Nichols is perfectly right. It is the taxpayer. Those who are earning not even necessarily great wages, their taxes are going into paying for this fabulous $2.4 billion scheme, I believe, for the actual home battery scheme. So what is the cost of net zero? Well, Australians are paying somewhere between $120 and $140 billion. The figures are really a bit washy, really difficult to know. And the fact of the matter is that it's taxpayers who are paying the dollars. So we have the capacity investment scheme alone is aiming to support $73 billion of investment by 2030, $52 billion in generation, $21 billion in storage, and therefore the big ones that go actually onto mostly farm properties. I can tell you right now, in the people for the people in Mallee, for farmers who are wearing this enormous cost by the Labor government to go for that ideological aim of net zero, it is happening out in our electorates. We're paying for it. The Nationals believe in a much better energy policy, which is cheaper, it is better and it is fairer. We're not planning on diving well and truly above OECD countries of our kind. We just want to match them in real terms, not the promises, not the ideological, fanfare that is constantly made, but it is in real terms, and Australia is already punching well above its weight. There is no way that it is justifiable for the Labor government to continue to pursue families that live in Australia to achieve their ideological aims.
Member for Maribyrnong.
Deputy Speaker, it is the height of hypocrisy for those opposite to come into this chamber and speak the word betrayal. If we want to talk about betrayal, let's talk about the decade of economic wreckage left behind by those opposite. Let's talk about the decade of denial, delay, cuts that stalled our energy grid and gutted the essential services that Australian families rely on. The opposition stands here today pretending to be the champions of everyday Aussies, but there seems to be some amnesia from those opposite, because let's look at their record. Let's look at the man that they're apparently going to elect to lead them, potentially tomorrow, the member for Hume. Who was he in those decades of those lost years while he was the Minister for Energy? Under the member for Hume's watch, energy bills didn't just rise, they soared. He presided over a chaotic, ideologically driven era where 4 gigawatts of dispatchable power left the grid with only 1 measly gigawatt put in to replace it. Those opposite didn't just fail to plan, they planned to fail. Well, Deputy Speaker, we on this side of the chamber know Australians are under pressure and we're doing something about it. Not 22 failed energy policies. Our plan is clear and every member on this side of the chamber is united behind that plan. It's to deliver real cost of living relief whilst building Australia's future. Since coming into office, we haven't just talked about the problem, we've acted. We are fixing the mess they left behind. We delivered the most significant energy bill relief in our nation's history. And how did the Coalition respond to this direct help for Australians that they say that they champion? They voted against it. Every single time we stand in this House to lower the bills of everyday Australians, they say no. They voted against the energy price relief plan. They voted against the caps on gas and coal prices. They talk about betrayal, but the fact that they can look into the eyes of struggling families and then go vote against their bill relief is the ultimate betrayal. Our government is doing the heavy lifting to rebuild a grid that they ignored for 10 years. We're acting on a suite of energy market reforms to make the market operate more efficiently, where we're investing in the renewable revolution. We've launched the Solar Share offer and the Cheaper Home Batteries program that is ensuring the benefits of the cheapest form of energy, renewables, are felt by the hip pockets of every Australian. I think of Rhonda and Mark and Travancore from my electorate, who have embraced the renewable energy in their household and are now reaping the awards. Cheaper energy prices. Deputy Speaker, those opposite may not want to talk about the past, but what about the future? Their decade of denial was a betrayal of the futures of young Australians. By refusing to acknowledge the reality of climate change, they didn't just stall our economy, they risked our children's future. Now they want to double down on that betrayal with a nuclear fantasy that experts say is the most expensive way to generate power and won't be ready for decades. It's a recipe for higher bills and more delay. Well, young Australians cannot afford such reckless policies. Deputy Speaker, Labor is delivering for working people. We have delivered real wage increases for the first time in a decade, benefiting our educators, our carers and our low-income workers. These are the everyday Australians those opposite say they are the champions of. But yet they vote against protecting penalty rates and rail against superannuation reforms that benefit working people. And on healthcare, we know the cost of living is tough. That's why we've made PBS medicines cheaper and freezing the price of PBS scripts to a maximum of $25, helping people like Fatima in my electorate who is living with a neurological disorder. She's in her 30s and the cost of her medicines has been a constant strain on her budget. Fatima represents the many Australians who are benefiting not just from cheaper medicine reforms, but more bulk billing services and our expanded network of Medicare urgent care clinics and the largest investment in women's health ever. And those opposite, they come in here and give speeches about government spending. Deputy Speaker, while we return to our communities tonight to continue delivering for them, those opposite will stay behind for yet another party room meeting where they'll attempt to knife their first female leader. And they want to lecture us about betrayal.
Member for Nichols.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. This topic is about the government's betrayal of Australians due to higher energy costs and other cost of living pressures. And you will have noticed that we've been asking a lot of questions of the Minister for Energy and Climate Change. And what I want to talk about to begin is the subject of integrity in campaigning, because I think that's really important. It's one thing to be on the Treasury benches, but how you get there and what you say to get there matters in a democracy such as ours. Now, before the 2022 election, the Labor Party, who spend 80% of their energy on the messaging and 20% of their energy on the actual policy,
That's exactly right.
got Reputex to do a bit of work for them, and someone came up and said, look, if this happens, this happens, this happens, that happens, people's energy bills could fall by $275. So the Prime Minister went out before that election campaign and said Australians' energy bills will fall by $275. I'm going to quote him. Yes, he said it 97 times. I'm going to quote the Prime Minister what he said about that modelling. The Prime Minister said that modelling that led to the promise of $275 fall in energy prices for households was the most comprehensive modelling ever done for any policy by any opposition in Australia's history. I'm going to repeat that. The Reputex modelling was the most comprehensive modelling ever done by any policy by any opposition in Australia's history. So the people of Australia probably thought, well, they've obviously done the work. And if they've done the work, the policy is sound. And if the policy is sound, we can expect our bills to drop by $275. And then there's an inability to take responsibility on behalf of the minister, and that's why we keep asking him about it. Now, I ask you, so when he gets up to the dispatch box, he starts talking about the home battery scheme. Now, I just ask my colleagues and anyone in this place, did the Prime Minister say households' energy bills will drop by $275 by 2025 if they get a cheaper home battery and pay 10 grand for it? Did he add that last bit on? I didn't hear him say that. I just heard him say that their energy bill will be reduced by $275.
That's exactly right.
So it wasn't a plan to reduce prices, it was a plan to reduce coalition seats. And unfortunately for Australia, it succeeded. But it's worth saying that I think when you go to the Australian people with a policy and you say it's the most comprehensive modelling you've ever done, you want to have done the modelling and you want to get it right, because now Australians are paying the price. They're paying the price of a failed energy system that is based on ideology, as many of my colleagues have said. And I am a supporter of renewable energy. I think it's a great technology. It needs to be rolled out in the right places, and it needs to be part of a diverse grid. And I've spoken before about the Centre of Independent Studies doing some modelling and showing examples from around the world where renewable energy is quite good in a grid, up to about 30 or 40%. But when you get over that, the instability increases and the prices increase. Now, that is what is happening around the world for the few countries who have tried this, and Australia's attempting to get to 82% renewable energy, intermittent power. It's not that we don't like renewable energy, it's not that we don't think it has a place, but to put so many eggs in that one basket means that we will get instability of the power grid, and that matters for households, I get that, but think about industry that's got to run 24/7. If they don't have reliable energy, and if they don't have cheaper energy, I worry, and I'm seeing it in my electorate, I worry that some of those businesses will say it's cheaper and easier to do business offshore.
That's right. Well, they are.
And the global emissions don't change if that happens. But by gosh, the Australian economy is damaged, and people who are employed by those companies lose their jobs. We lose economic activity. The tax receipts will fall. You won't be able to brag about redistributing as much money because you won't be getting as much tax. It's a real recipe for disaster in the Australian economy. It's causing great damage to families, to workers, to industries. And when you go to an election, do the work, get the policy right, and be honest with the Australian people. $275 was not honest, and the Australian people are paying the price.
Member for Spence.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Right now, families across Elizabeth, Salisbury, Gawler, Manapara, they are feeling the pinch. Groceries cost more, power bills bite harder, mortgage repayments stretch further than they used to. And at a time like this, Australians expect their government to focus on them, not on internal squabbles. The Albanese Labor government is focused on easing cost of living pressures, whilst those opposite fight each other. We are fighting for working people in communities like Spence. We're delivering more tax cuts for every Australian taxpayer. That means workers at Edinburgh, tradies on job sites in Playford, small business employees in Gawler keep more of what they earn. Combined with stronger wage growth and record job creation, that's real support in the weekly household budget. We've taken decisive action on student debt. We've cut 20% off help and student loan balances, wiping an average of $5,500 from individual debts. That's 3 million Australians nationally carrying a lighter burden. And in Spence alone, 19,243 current and former students benefit. That's young apprentices, Uni Hub Playford students, nurses, teachers and tradies starting their careers in the north. We've changed the repayment system as well. If you're earning $70,000 a year, your annual repayment drops by around $1,300. That's $1,300 staying in your pocket for groceries, fuel, school costs, or however you choose. We've made the single largest investment in Medicare since its creation over 40 years ago, because in Spence, bulk billing matters. We've expanded the bulk billing incentive and boosted payments to GP clinics that bulk bill every patient. More than 3,300 GP practices nationally are now fully bulk billing. In the north, 21 Medicare centres are delivering that support. And by 2030, 9 out of 10 GP visits will be bulk billed, because we're dedicated on expanding financially accessible services for all Australians. We've delivered the largest medicines price reduction in the 75-year history of the PBS. No Australian pays more than $25 for a PBS script. Concession card holders no more than $7.70. Australians have saved $2 billion at the pharmacy counter, and we've added or expanded those savings to more than 400 medicines on the PBS. For pensioners in Gawler, families in Elizabeth, veterans across the north, that's real relief. Our Medicare urgent clinics are another game changer. We promised 50, we delivered 124, with more to come. More than 2.5 million Australians have received free urgent care, and the Elizabeth Medicare Urgent Care Centre is doing outstanding work for the northern suburbs. Open 7 days, extended hours, fully bulk billed, no appointment needed. We've also committed $1.1 billion to strengthen mental health services across the country, including new and upgraded Medicare mental health centres offering free walk-in care, because mental health support must be accessible, local and free. And we recognise energy prices are too high. Families across the north know it every time the bill arrives. But the people of Spence also understand how important renewable energy is to Australia's future. That's why our community has embraced the Cheaper Home Battery Scheme. We now have the 5th highest battery uptake in South Australia and the 9th highest in the nation. That is the north stepping up. That is households investing in solar and storage to bring down their bills, and it delivers real short-term relief through lower quarterly bills and long-term security through cleaner, more reliable energy. On housing, we are making it easier for Australians to buy their first home. First home buyers can purchase with just a 5% deposit. And if you buy a house in the north, it means on average you would only need a $32,500 deposit to get your foot in the door.
That cuts years off the time it takes to save in growing areas like Munapara, Playford or Gawler. And they won't pay a single dollar in mortgage insurance. We're building 100,000 new homes just for first home buyers, including 17,000 in South Australia, nearly 7,000 reserved for first home buyers. This is practical cost of living relief and an increase of supply. Tax cuts, lower student debt, cheaper healthcare, cheaper medicines, energy bill relief now, energy security for the future, a fairer path into home ownership. There is more work to do, and we will keep on doing it. Because whilst others focus on themselves, we remain focused on everyday Aussies, focused on easing pressure, focused on practical relief, focused on delivering for every household across the north. Thank you.
Member for Riverina.
Mr. Speaker, I asked the Minister for Climate Change and Energy what I thought was a very reasonable question in question time today. I put to him, why hasn't anyone, just anybody at all, in the Albanese Labor government taken responsibility and just said sorry for failing to deliver the $275 energy bill reduction promised to Australian families? And what did he do back to me? He quoted Taylor Swift. Well, I want to quote another political philosopher, being Shania Twain, who once famously said, "That don't impress me much." Ooh. So you got the brains, but have you got the touch? Well, I would argue about the minister and brains, but I will give him some credit. But he certainly lost touch with ordinary, everyday Australians. And, Deputy Speaker, they are hurting. And they hurt especially every time they get their energy bills, because they're going up and up and up. Indeed, 38% increase in power costs for the average householder. And this is hurting, and you couple that with the cost of living crisis, and you can understand why people out there, outside this building, think that the minister has lost touch, and he has, and it's sad. And we know that energy is the economy. We know certainly that food production costs are increasing, and the poor old farmer, they are price takers, they are not price makers, and their bottom lines are reducing appreciably. And I'm surrounded by my Nats colleagues. We've got the members for Page, Parkes, Lyon, Hinkler and Nichols, and they are all great food-growing areas, along with the Riverina. And I appreciate there's probably some members over there who have areas where they grow food and fibre. I just saw the member for Durack turn around. I mean, she's got the biggest electorate in the world. But indeed, when it comes to producing food, it takes energy, and it's getting more and more expensive. And whether it's the Sunraysia or the Riverina or wherever it is just costing our farmers so much more. And every step of the way, they are being stymied by this Labor government. They're having to pay more for water, they're having to pay more for inputs, and they're having to pay more for power. And but the cost also is being borne by everybody every time they go to a supermarket and they get to the register and see that they've got less in their trolley and it's costing them more. They can't afford it, and they're having to make expensive costs. They're having to make expensive decisions, and it costs their family. It does. And we heard earlier in question time about families having to choose one sport over another for their kids. And this Labor government, well, they're just rushing policy through this place in haste. They're not considering the average, ordinary, everyday Australian whenever they make these policy decisions on the run. And we heard from the member for Nichols talking about renewables, and he's right. There's nothing wrong with renewables, but it has to be in balance. Indeed, 1 in 4 homes had rooftop solar under the former coalition government. It's the highest in the world. And I know the Labor government crows about it and says, oh, look, you know, we're fantastic in that regard. But we were getting to work on reducing power costs. Those opposite are only hurting people with higher energy prices, and it has to stop. The buck has to stop somewhere. It stops with this government. This government has said that they were going to address cost of living crisis, but spent the first 18 months putting in place a $450 million referendum on the Voice, dividing Australians and certainly getting nothing from that. And when you get the minister responsible for hoping to bring down energy costs, all he can do is quote Taylor Swift. Now, nothing against Taylor Swift, but seriously, he needs to get absolutely serious about the energy costs of this country. And then we have in Upper Lachlan Shire, where they actually support 53% of New South Wales green energy projects, they're getting blackouts all the time. And then they're being expected to put in more towers as high as 260 metres high. It's going to cover the countryside of Yass Valley and Upper Lachlan Shire when they're already paying the most when it comes to green energy projects. It has to stop. This government has to stop the reckless rollout of renewable projects because it's hurting regional Australia, and particularly my electorate of Riverina.
Member for Moore.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise to address the claim that Australians have been betrayed through higher energy prices and cost of living pressures. It's a serious allegation, but it should be tested against facts, history and responsibility. The rhetoric is loud, but the history is inconvenient. Let us start with energy. Wholesale electricity and gas prices did not suddenly become volatile because of a change of government. They were hit by a global energy shock following the war in the Ukraine. They were strained by an ageing coal fleet reaching retirement. They were constrained by inadequate transmission. They were weakened by a decade of stalled reform and policy drift. Those structural reforms were not new. They were inherited, a bit like their wealth. For nearly a decade, there was no settled national energy framework capable of attracting long-term capital from the so-called party of business. Announcements were made, schemes were floated, leaders were replaced, policies were rebadged and re-announced, investors were left waiting. Energy systems are capital-intensive and long-dated. If you delay decisions for political convenience, you do not avoid cost, you compound it. And the member for Page, I strongly suggest you visit regional Western Australia and see those remote communities and those mine sites you love so much, to see them adding renewables because of the savings in the mining industry. So energy systems do not respond to slogans. They respond to steel in the ground and capital committed. Capital, concrete, copper. And let us not forget another uncomfortable chapter, the great privatisation experiment. Across this country, Liberal governments have sold poles and wires, they've sold generation assets, they promised efficiency, competition, lower prices. Australians got higher network costs, vertically integrated gentailers with significant market power, and then a regulatory maze that made genuine competition harder, not easier. You cannot sell the family silver, pocket the proceeds, and then express shock when the new owners seek a commercial return. Once the assets are sold, governments lose direct leverage over pricing and planning. That is not ideology. This is corporate law. So what Australians saw much of the last decade was drift. What investors saw was risk. What households experienced was volatility. Since forming government, we have taken practical steps. First, we delivered targeted energy bill relief to households and small businesses. That has directly reduced pressure and contributed to moderating inflation. Second, we've accelerated transmission investment and supported new generation and firming capacity so reliability is maintained as ageing coal exits the system. Reliability is sustained by engineering and investment, not by a press conference. Third, we strengthened market oversights, competition settings to ensure Australians are not paying more than they should. And importantly, wholesale electricity prices have come down from the extraordinary peak seen during the global energy shock. That stabilisation matters. Wholesale markets drive retail outcomes. Reduced volatility is not accidental. It reflects coordinated intervention and new supply entering the system. On the broader cost of living question, context matters. Inflation surged across advanced economies. Europe, North America, Asia have all faced the same pressures. Supply chain disruption, labour shortages and energy shocks. The cost of living pressures Australians face are real and no responsible government dismisses them. And we have taken inflation seriously since day one. the responsible course in that environment is not to inflame demand or abandon fiscal discipline. It is to stabilise inflation, provide targeted relief, restore wage growth and maintain credibility. Inflation has moderated from its peak. Real wages have returned to growth and tax cuts have been delivered to every taxpayer. Cheaper medicines, expanded childcare, energy rebates have reduced household pressure. That is not betrayal. That is disciplined management in difficult global conditions. In 1964, Donald Horne wrote The Lucky Country. It is often quoted as praise. It was not. It was a warning. He warned that a nation run by second-rate people, I'm looking at you guys over there, who relied on luck rather than leadership, of shopkeepers and ticket clippers content to take margin from the system rather than building new capability. For too long, energy policy resembled ticket-clipping economics, defending ageing assets, delayed reform, avoiding hard decisions and hoping the market sorts it out. Energy markets do not reward hope, they reward planning.
Member for Lyon, I'd actually like to hear the member for Hinkler right now. You have the call, member for Hinkler.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And I rise to support the member for Page, who today provides the House with the important fact that this government's betrayal of Australians due to higher energy costs and other cost of living pressures is out of control. Only late last year I hosted the Deputy Nationals leader in my electorate of Hinkler, one of the lowest socio-economic regions of this country, and he was able to see firsthand that Labor's mismanagement is hitting Hinkler hard. As of late 2025, the average weekly rent for houses in Hervey Bay was sitting between $625 and $650. That's a super tight, high demand market with vacancy rates below around 1%. I recently toured the ever-expanding Neighbourhood Centre in Hervey Bay with CEO Tanya Stevenson and committee member Bernard Weeble. The organisation develops and delivers programs and services in response to community needs, and one of the most pressing is the need to support vulnerable people feeling the immense squeeze of Labor's cost of living crisis. Right. When power prices rise and keep rising under Labor, this impacts the well-being of our community, and organisations like the Neighbourhood Centre step up and are busier than ever. A drop in transport access to the elderly is meaning a loss of connection and not attending medical appointments. Demand for emergency relief is skyrocketing. The Neighbourhood Centre's Comfort Kitchen usually serves 80 meals every Wednesday night. It's now around 120, and the growth area, sadly, is in children's meals. More people are coming in to help for housing support, but there's very little left to provide. This week I also heard from the Salvos in Bundaberg, where Captain Chris Millard described a 20% rise in demand at Christmas time. More people needing food and essentials than ever before. This growing list of essential needs are simply too expensive under this government. Labor has presided over the biggest collapse in living standards in the developed world while fueling an addiction to spending that is driving up the cost of living today and leaving a $1.2 trillion debt bomb for the next generation. Under Labor, we have experienced the largest decline in living standards in the developed world. Mortgages are up by an average of $1,800 a month after 12 rate rises. Labor's spending has blown out from 24 to 27% of GDP, the highest level outside of a recession in nearly 40 years. Every minute we are paying $50,000 or $72 million a day just on interest on Labor's debt. Every dollar that pays interest is a dollar we can't spend on aged care, on Medicare, on schools or on hospitals or tax relief. We cannot put unsustainable spending on the national credit card for our kids to pay back tomorrow through Labor's higher taxes. After nearly 4 years of Labor, Australians are paying more for everything. Insurance up 39%, energy up 38%, rent up 22%, health up 18%, education up 17% and food up 16%. When I return home over the coming weeks, I will be asked, well, what will the Coalition do about this mess? We'll take the pressure off families, fix the budget and keep Australians safe. We will start by cutting income tax and easing cost of living pressures. We'll get the budget under control and stop the waste. We'll introduce affordable energy and responsible emissions reduction. And importantly, we must keep Australians safe at home and secure our borders. It's in our DNA to keep backing small business, growing the economy and creating jobs. We'll cut red tape, support enterprise and get more Aussies into work. The Nationals has led the plan for a cheaper, better and fairer future, with regional Australia at the heart of this sensible policy. Our energy and climate plan is to lower prices first by amending rules to prioritise lowest energy prices, to do our fair share by aligning ourselves with comparable nations, creating a fair go for all by scrapping senseless carbon taxes and reducing the region's heavy burdens. Empowering local solutions will support the local initiatives on the ground that make a positive environmental difference, and support all technology. It's not just about ruling out renewables, but having a sensible approach and a sensible mix, and protecting our security. We must prioritise defence, our critical minerals and our food and fuel security. The salvos in Bundy, the Neighbourhood Centre in Hervey Bay, like many service providers, are going to need more support to deliver and answer the constant calls for food, shelter and general expenses. It's about the weekly shop, the monthly power bill, the rent and the mortgage. This is Labor's cost of living crisis. Labor spend, prices rise and Australians pay.
That's right.
Member for Melbourne.
Thank you, Speaker. Betrayal. It is a dramatic word. It is meant to suggest abandonment. It's meant to suggest indifference. But I represent Melbourne. I know what indifference looks like. I saw it before I entered this parliament as the CEO of the not-for-profit. I work with families across Melbourne who have never asked for help before. Parents in Carlton, South Yarra and Abbotsford. Workers, professionals, people who had always paid their bills. When the power bill rose, the rent rose, the grocery bills crept higher and the numbers stopped adding up. What I learned on the front line is simple. Government's choices matter. When government steps up, families steady. When governments drift, families fail. Energy prices have been volatile, that is true, but they did not rise in isolation. The Albanese Labor government inherited a system where 24 of 28 coal-fired power stations had announced closures without a proper replacement plan. A decade of stalled transmission projects, a decade of policy, chaos and denial. That is the context. The Albanese Labor government acted strongly. 3 rounds of energy bill relief, caps on runaway coal and gas prices, record investment in cheaper renewable energy and storage. Wholesale electricity prices fell by around a third last quarter. That matters in Melbourne, where renters and families feel every change. We are reforming the energy rules so that the market works better for customers, not just retailers, tightening the default market offer, cracking down on unfair fees, ensuring hardship customers are placed on the best available plan. We are delivering more than 150,000 cheaper home batteries nationwide, helping households store cheap solar power and permanently lowering bills. This is not short-term fix. This is a structural reform that reshapes the system. But the Albanese Labor government has never claimed energy reform alone would solve cost of living pressures. That is why this government's response has been broader and relentless. That's right. Tax cuts from every Australian taxpayer already flowing, with 2 further rounds legislated. By 2027-28, the average annual cut will be around $2,548. We cut student debt by 20%, the largest reduction in Australian history. In my electorate alone, more than 36,000 people carry student debt. That cut means thousands of dollars wiped away from every one of them. The Labor government reduced the PBS co-payment to $25. In Melbourne, residents have saved more than $18.8 million on cheaper medicines. We have strengthened Medicare, opened urgent care clinics, including in Carlton, backed increases to minimum and award wages, delivered back-to-back increases in Commonwealth rent assistance, provided cheaper childcare, extended TAFE and supported apprenticeships in housing and construction. This is not a government standing back. This is the Albanese Labor government getting on with the work, rebuilding and delivering. And let us be honest about the alternative. Under the former coalition government, real wages went backwards. Bulk billing fell, housing supply stalled, energy policy was paralysed. They had 10 years 10 years to prepare the grid, 10 years to strengthen housing supply and 10 years to protect Medicare. They did not. Now, that speaks of betrayal. In Melbourne, betrayal would be doing nothing. Betrayal would be telling renters in Fitzroy that the market will sort it out. Betrayal would be telling young people in Collingwood to accept lifelong debt. The Albanese Labor government rejects that approach. We are cutting student debt while investing in productivity. We are making medicines cheaper while protecting Medicare. We are backing housing supply so Melbourne does not become a city only the wealthy can afford. Speaker, I represent a city that organises, that mobilises, that demands fairness. Melbourne does not want slogans, Melbourne wants delivery. And that is what the Albanese Labor government is providing. Practical relief, long-term reform, relentless action for working people. That is not betrayal. That is a government standing shoulder to shoulder with the people of Melbourne. That is a government that stands, fights and delivers for working Australians. And that is the government I am proud to be a part of.
And this discussion has now concluded. Give the call to the clerk.
Government business, order of the day number 1, appropriation bill number 3, 2025 to 2026, resumption of debate on the second reading.
Just before the debate is resumed on this bill, I remind the House that it has been agreed that a general debate be allowed covering this bill and the 2 related appropriation bills. I give the call to the member for Capricorn.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. We are at a crossroads. Australia is struggling under the weight of a Labor government's reckless economic mismanagement, and nowhere is this more evident than in regional Australia in my electorate of Capricornia. As I have said repeatedly, it is deeply disappointing that while the wealth of this nation is generated in the regions, the federal Labor government continues to turn its back on regional Australia and fails to recognise the value and importance regions bring when government spending decisions are made. Today, as we bring these appropriation bills to the chamber, bills that allocate $12.7 billion to keep the government running, we must also confront the dire truth. This is a financial mess of Labor's own making, and ordinary Australians, particularly those in central Queensland, are being left to deal with the consequences. That's right. In total, these appropriation bills seek approval for $12.7 billion in additional appropriations, $9.1 billion for ordinary services, $3.5 billion for non-ordinary services and $9.2 million for the parliamentary departments. Deputy Speaker, let me be clear from the outset. The Coalition recognises the appropriation bills are the mechanism through which governments fund their policies and keep the machinery of government operating. But the decision not to oppose these bills must never be mistaken for an endorsement of this government's economic management, its spending priorities or its complete lack of fiscal restraint and disregard for everyday Australians who will ultimately be left to pick up the Albanese government's tab. Appropriation bills such as these present one of the rare opportunities for this parliament to step back and examine the totality of government operations, spending decisions and fiscal discipline, or in this case, the glaring absence of it. Because the uncomfortable truth is this: Australia is running on continual deficits, not because revenue is weak, but because spending is out of control. Record levels of revenue are being completely outstripped by record levels of spending and record levels of spending growth. This is not restraint, this is not responsible economic management, and is certainly not what Australians were promised. Deputy Speaker, since Labor's election to power in 2022, my constituents in Capricornia were promised they would be better off, that no one would be held back and no one left behind. Unfortunately for the people of Capricornia, that promise has been broken time and time again. Since Labor came to office, critical infrastructure and community projects in regional Australia have been delayed, defunded or thrown on the scrap heap altogether. Labor's policies are directly hurting regional communities, and these appropriation bills once again highlight a troubling pattern of neglect and misplaced priorities that continue to disadvantage central Queensland. This government's decisions show once again a government that is out of touch with the realities faced by Australians living outside the capital cities.
Sure does.
Deputy Speaker, one of the most damaging examples is Labor's decision to slash NDIS provider travel reimbursements by half. Under these changes, providers' capacity to travel to clients in regional and remote areas have been severely reduced regardless of distance. For communities spread across vast geographic areas like my electorate of Capricornia, this is not a minor...
It being 4:30 p.m, I propose that the question that the House do now adjourn. The member, of course, will be granted leave when she needs to continue when the debate is resumed. Give the call to the member for Mackellar.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, currently a quarter of Australian children are above the healthy weight range, placing them on an early trajectory towards chronic disease. Among adults, that figure rises to 2/3. This is clearly not an individual problem. It is a societal challenge that begins in childhood and compounds over time. Obesity remains a leading risk factor for type 2 diabetes, stroke, kidney disease, cardiovascular disease and, of course, several cancers. And in the current context, with Australia broadly facing a shortage of health professionals, including GP specialists and all allied health, and with hospitals around the country facing significant problems with bed block, and considering the new health reform agreement required an injection of an extra $25 billion just to get it across the line, it is abundantly clear that we are well over time to start focusing on prevention. The National Obesity Strategy estimates that obesity already costs our health system $12 billion every year, a figure that is projected to balloon to $88 billion by 2032 unless we act. There is overwhelming evidence of a direct link between children's exposure to junk food advertising and rates of childhood obesity. On average, studies suggest children are seeing up to 168 junk food ads every single week. This relentless marketing is not accidental. It is a sophisticated, research-driven strategy designed to create brand loyalty, drive consumption and normalise unhealthy eating habits from a young age so that it becomes entrenched for an entire lifetime. In 2022 alone, the Australian food sector spent $386 million on marketing for unhealthy food and drinks, with the majority of products being high in fat, sugar and salt. These are precisely the products that are contributing to our obesity crisis. Importantly, the National Obesity Strategy, the National Preventative Health Strategy and the National Diabetes Strategy all identify restricting unhealthy food marketing to children as a priority reform. That's why in 2023 I introduced the Healthy Kids Advertising Bill to remove junk food ads from TV and radio between 6 a.m. and 9:30 p.m. and to place an outright ban on paid junk food marketing on social media and other online environments. This policy is strongly backed by the Australian Medical Association, Dietitians Australia, Diabetes Australia, the Cancer Council, Food for Health Alliance, the Public Health Association of Australia and key medical colleges including the Royal Australian College of Physicians and of GPs. Parents regularly raise their concerns with me about predatory junk food marketing directed at their children, and research from the Australia Institute shows 2/3 of Australians support regulating unhealthy food marketing. It seems just plain wrong that corporations have been given a free rein to target our kids with the advertising of junk food that is making them sick. Corporations are getting rich by making our children sick. In 2024, the government commissioned a feasibility study led by the University of Wollongong to examine policy options to restrict unhealthy food marketing to children. My understanding is that the study's findings were delivered to the Department of Health 4 months ago. And so I urge the government to release this study so we can get on with the next steps of protecting our children's health. The consultation paper canvassed key options around junk food advertising, including restricting unhealthy food advertising on broadcast media between 5:30 a.m. and 11 p.m, including on TV, radio, cinema, podcasts and streaming services. It also raised the idea of restricting all online marketing for unhealthy food products and banning unhealthy food advertising on outdoor media, including government-owned assets within 750 metres of schools and along major transport corridors. The South Australian Government has already implemented a mandatory ban on unhealthy food and drink advertising across all government-owned transit assets, including buses, trains and trams. Globally, more than 40 countries have acted to regulate junk food advertising. Speaker, Australia is lagging behind while unhealthy food marketing continues to target our children. Let's get busy.
Member for Werriwa.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. The community that I serve in Werriwa in southwest Sydney is a snapshot of modern Australia. People from all parts of the globe have chosen to settle, work and raise their families in our community. In the most recent census, we find that 66% of households in the electorate of Werriwa use a language other than English at home. Of these, Arabic, Vietnamese, Hindi, Assyrian, Neo-Aramaic and Spanish are the most common. And just over 68% of Werriwa residents note that both parents were born overseas, compared to the national average of 36%. In the decades from 2001 to 2020, almost 47,000 people arrived from overseas to call our community home. The world is reflected in the faces of the people who live in Werriwa. Unfortunately, at the moment, the world is a very sad and distressing place. We see on our nightly news and in social media conflicts everywhere. The ongoing illegal invasion of Ukraine, the devastation and displacement in Gaza and the West Bank, conflict and war in Sudan, Cambodia, Myanmar, Thailand, Iraq and recently Iran, and for our Kurdish community. Many in our community are devastated and haunted by what they see, particularly as most still have relatives and friends who are being subjected to the horrors every day. I know because I've listened to too many stories recounted that detail the distress and helplessness they feel. I met with leaders from the Australian Kurdish community this week. Their concern and distress is obvious, not just in their words. Thank you to Councillor Mira Ibrahim, Councillor Ismet Tassan, Baran Selk, Dilvan Burkhan and Bruce Avery, the President of the Federation of the Democratic Kurdish Society in Australia. I also note the concerns and distress of those in our community of Islamic faith, who have been the subject of vile attacks on social media and in person. These attacks are often nauseating, and I'm not going to detail them here, but I know that the AFP and the New South Wales Police are aware and investigations will continue. Too often schools and places of worship in Werriwa are the subject of racist incidents which cause fear and distress. I am told that this has meant that many in our community are fearful to practice their faith at the mosques around Werriwa. I unequivocally speak out against this behaviour. This is not our community or Australia I know. We pride ourselves on being an egalitarian society where every single person has the right within the law to worship the God of their choice or not believe at all. I thank our Islamic community for their warmth and friendship towards my family and I. And while there are so many names I could mention here, I note Amit Polat, Ismail and Recep Dogan and the board of the Affinity Association, who've been working towards a harmonious community for several decades. Also Amar Aga and Mazir Hadid of the Australian Islamic House and Ayman Alwan from Alemannia College, and many, many more. We are a society who respects each other. Overwhelmingly, this is true. Look at the number of people who volunteer, who run towards danger to help our fellow citizens. We've seen this time and time again this summer, rescuing people from rips and sharks, standing in front of bullets. The experiences are too many to mention, but they occur every day. If you are finding you are distressed or need further support, please consider seeking help from your GP or one of the Albanese government's new Medicare mental health facilities. The Medicare mental health facilities closest to our community are at 6 Dumaresque Street, Campbelltown, or 200 03 Northumberland Street, Liverpool. And if you're between 12 and 25, Headspace at Edmondson Park is open for mental health support as well. During the recent election, I was proud to stand with the Minister of Health to promise another Medicare mental health facility in Werriwa. I'm working with the Assistant Minister for Mental Health to ensure this is delivered to our community in the next financial year, and so it provides further support. Also launched in January is the Medicare Mental Health phone line. You can call this to provide support and referrals. Ring 1800 595 212. There will be someone that you will be connected to that can help. Lifeline and Beyond Blue are also available for further support.
The question is the House to now give the call to the Manager of Opposition Business.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise today to highlight to the government the importance of the right allocation of capital within the economy and the consequences of their lack of understanding of the role of public finance and public financing of industry and innovation in our economy. And I want to note it's been a privilege to hold the role of industry and innovation in the Member for Farrer Susan Lee-led opposition, because we understand the role of capital in the economy. The government's told us for years that we've been promised this future made in Australia that would be delivered by the government. We were told that if enough taxpayer cheques were written, we could manufacture our way to prosperity. But, Mr Speaker, when you witness what is happening, the inevitable unravelling of the government's net zero at any cost agenda, we do see the cracks of this idea that public finance can rescue industry and innovation coming to the fore. Let's have a look at the graveyards of Labor's manufacturing dream. Redflow, the champion of zinc bromine storage, entered administration in August 2024. It had everything the Labor Party loves: grants from California, millions from Queensland Labor, US defence contracts. It had state support, but it lacked market viability. Energy Renaissance, the pride of New South Wales lithium manufacturing, collapsed in 2025. These bankruptcies were screaming market signals about these businesses. But yet the government's response wasn't to reflect on these market signals or understand them or attempt to understand them, but to announce a $500 million battery breakthrough initiative. Speaker, this is an investment. This is the investment in the zombification of the economy using taxpayers' money to raise the dead. It will not work. Nowhere is this arrogance clearer than through the National Reconstruction Fund. We were told the National Reconstruction Fund would build sovereign capability. It sounds like a worthy goal, but instead it uses $45 million of taxpayer funds to refinance Arnott's Biscuits. And let's not be romantic about Arnott's Biscuits. It's a company owned by a US private equity giant with hundreds of billions in assets. Why does it need $45 million of taxpayers' money? Private lenders were lining up to fund Arnott's. The NRF, the government-funded, the taxpayers' NRF, didn't crowd in investment, it crowded out the private sector to refinance a snack food company. How is that investing in sovereign capability? It isn't. Worse still is the financial vandalism. In 2023, Labor promised that the National Reconstruction Fund would return the bond rate plus 2 to 3%. That is a pretty worthy goal. But last week they announced a $5 billion net zero sub-fund explicitly targeting a return of 1% below the bond rate. In 2 years, Labor's turned a $15 billion investment of taxpayers' money, public money, a vehicle into a guaranteed loss-making machine, structural loss. They're borrowing money we don't have to invest in companies that lose money to generate a lower return than the cost of borrowing the money in the first place. Imagine if we gave Warren Buffett $5 billion and said, could you go and make a return for us instead? The taxpayer could pay down some of our debt and lower taxes. Instead, structural losses, now 1% below the bond rate. The two-class economy that Labor is creating, the Minister calls this world-leading finance. I call it reckless gambling. As a lifelong Liberal, it is reckless gambling with taxpayers' money, borrowed money on borrowed time. We've seen massive heavy industry bailouts, billions for Whyalla Steelworks from the public, millions for smelters. The last one was Glencore Smelters in Mount Isa. It sounds worthy, but $600 million for 600 workers, that's $1 million per job in a bailout. $1 million per job saved. Now compare that to largesse to the record 41,000 small businesses that have collapsed into insolvency under this government. The local builder, the corner cafe that has gone out of business at record rates don't have lobbyists in Canberra. They don't have bailouts coming from a government. What they get is an ATO debt notice, and what the Minister for Small Business announced this week is a helpline for their debt. the failure, no rescue for them. There's a two-class economy being created by this failure to understand finance, failure to understand what crowding in public sector money does to private sector finance. The people who are too big to fail get huge government bailouts. The forgotten families and their businesses and everyone from the bottom up gets more red tape and more debt notices and more liquidations. Speaker, the deeper problem is the signal this sends. When you tell investors that losses don't matter, you break the market's compass. When the government tries to subsidise things that are failing already in fields that are failing structurally, taxpayers' money is wasted, capital is distorted, and the government is deep in debt, and every one of us has to pay back that debt anyway. Speaker, I say to the Labor Party, reconsider your National Reconstruction Fund, understand public finance, and understand what structural inflation you are causing with this mess.
I thank the Manager of Opposition Business. I give the call to the honourable member for Banks.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In my first speech to the House, I spoke of Australia's unique positioning in the Asia-Pacific and the importance of strong relationship with our closest neighbours and regional partners. I also spoke about my own family's heritage in Southeast Asia and my time in diplomacy. As we finish the first sitting fortnight of the new year, I wanted to take this opportunity to recognise some of the great work of this Labor government in the foreign affairs portfolio to strengthen these regional relationships, which came to fruition last weekend. I was so pleased to see the Prime Minister and Foreign Minister's successful visit to Indonesia. As the Prime Minister said in question time earlier this week, no country is more important to Australia or to the prosperity, security and stability of our region and the Indo-Pacific than Indonesia. At the centre of the visit was a meeting with President of the Republic of Indonesia, Prabowo Subianto, and the signing of the historic Australia-Indonesia Treaty on Common Security. This treaty builds on the 1995 Agreement of Maintaining Security signed by Prime Minister Keating and President Suharto. The agreement reflects the strong relationship between our two countries, elevating our defence cooperation to a new level. It emphasises the close friendship and partnership we share and the deep trust that exists between our two countries. The treaty encompasses a number of new initiatives, including the development of joint defence training facilities on Morotai Island, a new embedded position for a senior Indonesian military officer in the Australian Defence Force, and the building of ties between future military leaders through the expansion of the Junior Leaders Forum Military Exchange Program. Importantly, the treaty signed on Friday commits our countries to leader-level consultations. That, in combination with the Defence Cooperation Agreement signed in 2024, an agreement which makes it easier for our respective defence forces to operate from each other's territory and bases, ensures strong security engagement between our two countries. Formal diplomatic ties between Australia and Indonesia commenced on the 27th of December 1949, when Australia recognised Indonesia's independence. However, the connection extends much farther, with archaeological discoveries unveiling contact being made by the Makassar and Kupang people of Indonesia and Indonesian Australians hundreds of years ago. Australia and Indonesia's relationship is steeped in centuries of history, friendship and trade. In 2024-2025, Indonesia was our 9th largest two-way trade partner by value of $34.8 billion and our 10th largest export market at $16.42 billion. Indonesia is also Australia's top destination for short-term overseas travel, with around 1.75 million visits made by Australians in 2024-2025, and more than 200,000 Indonesians in total have studied in Australia, including senior government and business leaders. The agreement signed by the Prime Minister is the latest expansion of the long and rich friendship between our two countries. With international and regional security being as important as it has ever been, Australia and Indonesia are working together. As my friend, the Deputy Prime Minister, described, as the very closest of neighbours, as the very dearest of friends and with a shared commitment of purpose and destiny. Deputy Speaker, in my first speech to the House, I also said that a threat to peace and security anywhere is a threat to peace and security everywhere. So I want to close by reminding the House of some of the less-known threats to peace around the world. As we speak, the brutal conflict in the Sudan rages on, causing unthinkable suffering. Tensions continue to escalate in the Horn of Africa, and concerning reports continue to come from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the Sahel and Myanmar. While our priority in this House is always Australia, we must remind ourselves of what is happening around the world, and it should give us some pause to reflect of how fortunate we are to be Australians.
The question is the House to now, Jenny. Give the call to a member for Cook.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge Dr John Noor, OAM, who has been recognised for his service to the Coptic Orthodox Church and to the Egyptian community. His contribution exemplifies the vital role faith and cultural organisations play in my local electorate in fostering inclusion, providing support and strengthening cohesion in our multicultural society. Through leadership, service and quiet dedication, Mr Noor has helped build bridges across my community and ensure faith remains a source of unity and supports many local families. He is a great man. I congratulate him on this very well-deserved recognition. I also rise to acknowledge a number of outstanding local organisations that have recently received volunteer grants, making a significant difference across the Sutherland Shire. St Raphael's Catholic Parish has a parish minister coordinator, Michael Fernandez and Thomas Aluka and Jan Chekaritsky. For their service, leadership and dedication, we gave them a volunteer grant so they can continue to do great work in the community. I recognise Lillypilly Public School P&C, Carly Sidey, for helping organise a number of great volunteer events at Lillypilly and building a lovely community garden there. I'd also like to acknowledge Gymea Bay Public School P&C, coordinated by Renee Kirchner, as well as Laguna Street Public School P&C Association, organised by Bo Thompson. These parent-led organisations are essential to strengthening our local school communities and supporting students. I'd like to acknowledge First Caringbah Scouts, organised by Sharon Abbott, for their commitment to youth development and leadership in the local area. At Southside Church, I'd like to recognise Pastor Phil MacArthur for his leadership and service in my community. I'd like to acknowledge Kingsway Community Care under the stewardship of Brooke Stewart. They provide an essential role in my community with housing, and they also help a number of domestic violence victims and their families. I commend Swim Coffee Chat and the Cronulla Gropers, founded by Jason Dory and Lee Murphy, for they do amazing work, and I enjoy participating with them, swimming out to Shark Island every day. They're out there looking after men and men's mental health, doing a great job. Thank you, gentlemen, for what you do for our local community. I'd like to acknowledge the extraordinary work of Dandelion Support Network, led by Gabrielle Humphreys and Operation Coordinator Kayleen Pring. They support families in need and women with children with prams, strollers, car seats, beautifully arranged, often domestic violence victims as well. Thank you for what you do for our community. I want to recognise Skills for Me founder and CEO Sarah Costello and Program Director Sarah Diner for their work supporting young people and families. I've been there and seen what they do with disabled children in our community, often some of the most highest needs disabled children, providing a safe space and a network for all these families. Ladies, thank you for what you do. The St Luke's Anglican Church, Miranda Parish, organised by Philip Moss, and the Catholic Parish of St Aloysius, led by Father James McCarthy. Both great people who do great things for people of faith in our community. I'd like to thank Marine Rescue Botany Bay Port Hacking, organised by Greg Spencer, whose volunteers give their time and keep people safe on our waterways. I'd also like to acknowledge the Morris Children Fund, founded by Gary Morris. They do fantastic work visiting the local schools in my electorate where there are disabled children with beautiful sensory rooms, all types of great programs so they can participate like every other child in our electorate. I'd also like to acknowledge the Nicole Fitzsimons Foundation, led by Kate, Vince and Matt Fitzsimons. Congratulations on the work you do, and again, I am so sorry for your recent loss. They've got compassion, commitment, they help families and children in need. Each of these organisations and the individuals behind them represent something profoundly important. They remind us that strong communities are not built by governments, they are built by volunteers, faith leaders, parents, coaches, fundraisers and everyday Australians who choose to make part of their life doing for others. I place on record my sincere thanks to every individual organisation I have named tonight. Their work strengthens our local community, helps the vulnerable and embodies the very best of the Sutherland Shire.
The question is the House to now adjourn. I give the call to the member for Leichhardt.
Hear, hear. Thank you, Speaker. It is late on a Thursday afternoon. This time tomorrow I will be back in beautiful Leichhardt, one of the best places in Australia. Even you, Speaker, despite your passion and love for Oxley, must acknowledge the natural beauty of Leichhardt. I mean, where else can you visit the tourist magnets of Cairns and Port Douglas? Hear, hear. I was actually just up in Mossman, Port Douglas, just a couple of weeks back, running community offices, catching up with council, local community groups, the Mossman Botanic Gardens. One of the groups I did meet was the Low Isles Preservation Society. For those who don't know, the conservation group is dedicated to the protection, preservation and, I guess, projection of the Low Isles, which are just off the coast of Port Douglas. Reef trips all around the world, they go there. Hear, hear. It wasn't long ago that that group got a grant of just under $7,000 through the federal government Stronger Communities program to help them deliver educational panels and signage to help them with their mission and to educate our youth. The grant there was obviously sourced by the former member and delivered by the Albanese Labor government. Supporting local conservation groups is so important, making sure we're passionate locals protecting these places and they know the best way to keep them safe. Locals always know best. Hear, hear. And I'm really keen to make sure we're helping groups up in my electorate, like the Low Isles Preservation Society, protect far north Queensland. One of the things that was raised at the meeting was the need to get more opportunities for more Australians to get out on the reef. The best way to protect the reef, to learn about the reef, is to come and visit it and help protect and promote one of our great marine wonders. This is why I can't wait for the Albanese Labor government's Reef Educational Experience Fund to kick off. Hear, hear. $6 million for a Kids on the Reef rebate program for schools right across Australia to subsidise excursions to our Great Barrier Reef, making it easier for students to experience our natural beauty firsthand. Hear, hear. $1 million in support for local reef tourism operators, covering up to 50% of the costs necessary for the upgrades, checks or clearances that are going to be required to accommodate these school groups. And another $3 million for Tourism Tropical North Queensland, who do a fantastic job to deliver the international education campaign in key overseas markets, showing everybody you should visit the reef, not just to see it, but also to help protect it. Hear, hear. All of this builds into the Albanese Labor government's record investment of over $1.2 billion to protect, manage and restore the Great Barrier Reef, which, as we know, is responsible for over $9 billion a year into the economy and protects 77,000 jobs. Hear, hear. But beyond that, everyone who lives along the reef knows that this natural titan is more than economy. It is culture. It is everything that we are in the far north. It's what draws us there. And giving the opportunity to the youth of Australia to come along, visit, learn to love it, because you protect what you love. And this is giving young kids the opportunity that I would never have had growing up in Victoria, to go to a tropical paradise and experience firsthand 6 of the world's 7 marine turtles. Turtles are great. Everyone will write home about them. The clownfish, now affectionately known as Nemo, though I'm not sure if anyone's asked them if they're okay with that change. We can't afford to risk the future of the reef. Protecting the reef is a responsibility. It is a legacy for all of us. And I'm proud that this Anthony Albanese Labor government
is taking the protection of the reef seriously.
Hear, hear.
So the important thing to remember is that protecting the reef is an active thing, and the best way to protect the reef is to come and visit it. Anyone who knows science knows that data is key, and we get data by getting eyes on the reef, and we get eyes on the reef by people coming up to visit. Citizen science, the Trippy program, the removal of cots, all depends on people coming to visit. You help our economy, you help it maintain those 77,000 jobs, and you help protect one of the great natural wonders of the world.
Hear, hear.
A truly special place. I will be home very, very soon. I will walk along the beaches of the Coral Sea, and I will look out, knowing that the reef is there now, knowing that we're working to protect the reef for generations, and knowing that hundreds of thousands of people will come to Cairns to experience it with me. Come to the reef, come to Leichhardt, have the time of your life.
Hear, hear.
It being 5 p.m, the House stands adjourned until Monday, 2nd March 2026 at 10 a.m.